So we can. Okay. Now, call the meeting to order. And first item is establishment of a quorum. Wilson, you want to do a roll?
Yes. President Wheeler,
Here.
Vice President Bella,
Here.
Director Schmidt,
Here.
Director Zuka,
Here.
Director Covington. Here.
Okay. Pledge of allegiance. Brian, since it's your last opportunity.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And then item 1, oath of office. Allison, you want to do that?
Yes, I will. All right, Dr. Covington, if you want to stand.
Do you have a copy of what it is I'm supposed to send?
And you can repeat after me.
All right, that's even better.
Yes, definitely. You raise your right hand. I, state your name,
I, Joanne Covington,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
foreign and domestic,
foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
the duties upon which I am about to enter.
the duties upon which I am about to enter.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
That's my stuff.
To you all. I would normally, but I have some friends coming over, so. I wanted to get
It's
away.
recorded.
Yeah, I need a quorum back there.
So, item 2, public comment. Do we have any public comment?
No comments.
Any comment? Agenda review, additions or deletions? From anybody?
I understood from Kat that we're gonna move Chuck's item towards the end.
It is on here as. Where was it?
So it's 8H, I believe. To Kat, do you?
Yeah,
no,
so
EH.
what we had discussed is moving that item 8H actually to the end of the meeting, either following director reports or following communications, since we have to have communications this time. Just taking it out of order.
If that's okay.
That's fine. Any objection?
No.
Good.
And
I
then,
had
yeah, go ahead. Director
I was gonna
Schmidt.
say, you had something for the minutes, but I can save that for consent.
Right. Item 5, consent agenda, we have 2 items. Anyone have any comments or questions?
I do. Kat, I tried to email you. I'm not sure if I actually did it successfully.
Yes.
I did, okay. Did you, that look good to you guys? Any concerns?
That's fine with me. Would you like me to read it out to everyone?
Sure. So just for people's reference, it's page 7, line 136. The paragraph beginning Director Schmidt. I wanted to delete that sentence and replace it. Yeah, you want to go ahead?
Yes, with Director Schmidt noted that he was voting on this resolution on the basis of the ad hoc committee's recommendation and the evidence before him, and that other candidates were not present or otherwise requesting consideration of their application.
Okay. I don't object. Okay,
I have no other issues with the consent items.
Bruce, anything?
Oh, I'm good. We'll offer the motion then.
I move the consent items
As you know.
as amended. Thank you.
I'll second.
Okay,
Director Schmidt,
Yes.
Vice President Bella,
Yes.
Director Zuko.
Yes.
Director Covington,
Yes.
President Wheeler.
yes. Okay, moving on, item 6, hearing and appeals, I believe we have none. And capital improvement program, item 7.
Yeah, so I don't know, Brandon, if you want to take the lead on that one.
I was gonna take the lead, Cat. I
Okay.
talked to Brandon Jubin earlier.
Yeah, as much as we'd like to advocate for ourselves, it's probably best that the district do that, so
That's fair.
humility abound.
So the item before the board tonight is staff is asking that you authorize or consider resolution 2025-06 that authorizes the task order 2509 with Packport Consulting Group, the district's engineer for construction management, construction inspection services for the latest capital project, getting ready to go out to bid the DeKoven Avenue, Lincoln Avenue, Newlands Avenue, and Oakville Drive water main improvements. The task order totals $502,155. This capital program, this continuation of our capital programs, and we're ready to go out to bid. What we don't have is the construction management and inspection services lined up. And so we asked Jubin's office if they would prepare proposals. Their contract states that anytime they do any work over $100,000, they have to put together a proposal, submit it to the district's office of consideration, and it needs to come to the board for approval. So that's what's before the board. I was looking at the amount of the work, the current engineer's estimate for the job. It's not the actual cost of the job, but what the engineer estimated is about $3.5 million. So we're gonna be, if that was the price, we'd have a 10% contingency with it. There's another cost that the estimation has for mobilization, demobilization, about $180,000. And so if you take a look at the cost of just a rough estimate at this point, and that mobilization, demobilization, it comes up to about $3.7 million. So the cost of the construction inspector and management services is about 13% of that cost, which is kind of in line. Usually, the engineer support services can be anywhere from 10 to 15% of the project, depending on the size and the scope. This project is going to take and make some improvements near our DeKoven tanks on DeKoven Avenue, come off DeKoven, go around on Lincoln, come down Newlands, and replace 2,100 foot of pipeline with new 12-inch ductile iron pipe. And then on the Oakville Drive is another almost 1,200 foot of 8-inch ductile iron pipe that we're replacing. What's interesting on this one is we're recommending going in and improving a water main that goes up the side of a hill between houses. We've been trying to get away from what we call cross countries going in between, but this one, because you're going up Oakville Drive and it's just only one source of water supply going up, we thought it'd be better to have that cross-country pipeline reestablished so that we have another point of water, another source of water going up top of Oakville. And it makes a difference when you do the hydraulic analysis for fire protection. So that's something that's a part of this particular project. So the work for, to be done by Packport Consulting Group, typical, they're gonna help us with bid support through the award. They're gonna be responding to any kind of questions that the contractor may have. They'll be reviewing the submittals for all the material that the contractor submits, saying, hey, we want to put in these fire hydrants. They're just gonna make sure that they're the type of fire that we want to have, those types of things. That they'll be the ones putting together the construction meetings or pre-construction and post-construction meetings. There'll be a full-time inspector on the job during the entire job. And then they'll provide the administrative services. By that, it's things like they'll take a look at the amount of work that's been done by the contractor, compare that with what they want to try and charge us or bill us for that particular month's worth of work so that we can pay the contractor. So they do those kinds of things. They would be preparing the record drawings. Once the project's done, they'll take all the work that actually gets built out there and conform them into some record drawings that'll eventually go into our geographical information system for our own records. And then on this one, as we've been doing lately is they're gonna be working with a corrosion consultant, DNA consulting engineers, and just make sure that, the pipelines are protected so that they last hopefully for 100 years, and we don't have to do this for a long time. And this is something that's different too, is we're actually gonna have MIG, they're an environmental consultant, just spend a little bit of money just to make sure they do some biological monitoring in case something comes up, just have them on hand. So the time estimate for this job is about 130 days of construction, could be less. We actually did really well here on Old County Road, but we just never know. Now we're gonna go work in the neighborhoods. And so now you have the constraints of narrow streets of Belmont and, neighborhood traffic. So we'll see. But right now, that's the estimate of 130 days of construction. So with that, I'll end my comments, then recommend that the board approve the resolution. Yes, Louis.
Brandon, the property between the two houses, who does it belong to?
It's our easement. We have,
Oh, it's like.
It's an easement, yeah.
Are there utility easement?
Yeah.
Or all of it is our easement?
yeah, it's probably what, 5 or 10 foot, Brandon, do you remember? Or maybe you do, maybe you don't.
It's a recorded dedicated easement.
Yeah, it had been there in place for a long time and we had turned it off because the pipeline was old and we just didn't want to have anything just all of a sudden rupture and make a mess. But, we decided that, we'd like to have another water source going at the top of Oaknell instead of just crawling up Oaknell. And so we decided that we would rehab that line with a new line, and put it in place and protect it. So it'll be a brand new ductile iron pipe wrapped and coated to protect it from, rust from the outside. And hopefully- Have some anode sacks. That's what we typically use to protect our pipelines. So it should last. We monitor the cathodic system. We go out there and do checks to make sure that the current is still there, there's tolerances.
Yeah. Okay, so it's our property basically, right?
Yeah, it's our easement.
That's good. All right.
Any questions?
No, I mean, I'll just sort of comment that I think, I would look at this and say that $500,000 on a $4 million construction job is a little bit heavy. But then reading it, it sounds like there's a 20% contingency for overtime and weekends, so rather than having to come back to the board, which we've also had to do in the past
Yeah.
to go over.
Yeah.
That makes sense, but from a percent standpoint, it felt pretty heavy for me, so when I read into the details, I'm like, all right, I get it, it's really not bad, it's 130 working days, 20% extra, so it's probably a $400,000 inspection job, which is more in line with what I would expect.
I think Jubin told me that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, to that point, yeah, generally, we could expect construction support services to be around the 15%. And the reason why the fee is what it is where this work is taking place. It's very narrow corridor. Heavily, there's extensive existing utilities, so we anticipate kind of slower going from the contractor. And, our contracts are time and material. And so if the contractor ends up having a more successful pipeline installation and their pace of work is faster than the record that the engineer of record anticipates, then of course, that's a savings, to the district. So, and then typically at the end of these projects, we provide the district a report of, how the construction progress did, how the construction actually installation went, and then also kind of a report of how our services went, and so the district can see final numbers, so.
There's gonna be services attached on it? No, not
Water services?
Yeah, not in the easement portion.
Yeah, so what Rena explained, that particular portion of water main is just, you could consider it kind of like a transmission main, just to get water.
Exactly, yeah.
Distribution main up to the top, because it's a dead end main on top of the hill.
Yeah.
So it's a choke point in the system.
Yeah.
The rest of the mains, there aren't many services that are connected to this, it's at the higher point of the zone. As the main starts getting lower into the distribution system, there's a couple services, but
So, but getting back to the transmission portion of it, in the easement, that we are replacing an existing,
Uh,
or replacing it next to, or replacing the old one and putting the new.
I believe what we're doing, and I can verify this perhaps in the engineering report, but I believe what we're doing is we're actually relining. We're gonna be using the old pipe. As a basically, instead of pulling in a new line, I believe we're gonna be lining that with structural.
I was looking at they have 6-inch pipe, and it's only 400 foot, and I think
That's rehabilitated existing 6-inch pipe.
But
That's it, yeah. So we're gonna put a liner inside, a structural liner inside to basically bring that pipe back alive.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's more of an in situ form of
Very simple.
material, yeah. Okay.
Well,
Because I was thinking, trying to put ductile iron down that,
Right, and he's
Easement
trying to do that with cathodic
at a-
protection too, this isn't
but
gonna-
it's probably a 25% slope.
Yeah.
So it would be hard to do.
Yep.
And 2 6-inch lines ought to be able to serve the 2 fire hydrants that are out there.
Yeah, because now we're coming in from both sides.
From
Again,
both,
that main was there years ago
Okay,
and it
yeah.
got killed, probably not knowing the drastic effect it could have on fire flows at the very end of the main. So this is gonna provide a tremendous amount of help for those residents up on, is it Oak Knoll? Yeah,
Oh, no, yeah.
so.
Okay. Any questions?
I guess I did have one question. I noted in the letter that the addendum preparation is going to eliminate Oak Hill water main portion from the plans and the specifications as the city recently overlaid the street.
That is correct.
So 2 questions on that. 1, can you explain that? And 2, is that all taken into account in the expected cost of the project, or will that result in different cost?
It is, and I think you mentioned 4 million. The engineer's estimate, I believe, is more actually around 2.5 million with it, and then add on the contingency on top of that. Oak Knoll was removed because typically the city of Belmont, once they overlay or they do surface treatment to the roads, they put a moratorium on that road so that it doesn't get chewed up again or affected by construction. And so because the city went in and did the surface treatment on the road, we removed that portion of the work from the contract. And let's see, and then to answer your other question was,
Was the cost?
yeah, so
Is that already taken into account in your estimates?
the estimate, I believe that, I think that you recorded, Ren, I don't think this includes this, I think
You think
it's
that's less?
supposed to remove the Oak Knoll. So our fee is more around the 20% range. Again, because of the tightness of the roads, we're gonna have a full-time inspector on site, and because of the complications that we possibly may anticipate, we have a little bit more support staff assisting from the engineer side to help with design support and then the inspector out in the field. And then again, it's all time and material, and so I don't necessarily anticipate spending this, the full amount, but we just want to cover our basis and come back to the board, so.
Okay.
You know, I thought the capital budget had the original project in there for 2.5 million or
Mhm.
something like that as construction.
Yeah, the engineer of record came up with the estimate.
Right.
And so, I mean, that was their opinion at the time, so.
It's been in design for a long time.
It has,
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
I'll make one to approve resolution 2025-06.
I'll second.
Director Zuka,
Yes.
Director Schmidt,
Yes.
Director Covington,
Yes.
Vice President Bella,
yes,
President Wheeler.
Yes. Okay, moving on to item 8A. Consider resolutions 2025-04 and 2025-05 approving 2 water supply assessments required under secret and State Bill 610. And Drew, are you going to do this or is Kat going to do it?
I'm happy to, unless Scott wants to say anything up front.
Go for it, and I'm here for support.
Cool. Yeah, so, yeah, obviously, as you all remember, last, board meeting, we presented, the 2 water supply assessments we've been working on for the city of Belmont Harbor Industrial Area specific plan, and the city of San Carlos, Northeast Area specific plan. You know, we had some background here about the specifics of those specific plans, but, you know, basically, you know, from what we understood, the board wanted to add some language in the introduction and conclusion, basically highlighting the potential dry year shortfalls faced by these projects in response to the Bay Delta Plan amendment. So we went ahead and made those adjustments. We included some of the red line pages in the agenda showing what was the specific language changes that we made to both the introductions and conclusions. And yeah, basically just highlighting the potential dry year shortfalls through 2045, you know, both with and without these 2 projects. So yeah, so basically, you know, the changes themselves were quite minor in terms of change to the language. And yeah, we just yeah, request that the board approve the 2 water supply assessments with these changes to the language. And yeah, I think that's all.
Questions?
No, I'm fine with the use as changed. I think it highlights information. Now it's up to the city.
All right.
No, I spoke with the general manager about these and she sent me the PowerPoints.
We had a fairly long discussion on it.
That's what she implied. You didn't come out right and say that.
Do you have any questions?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah.
We
have it on.
entertain a motion.
I'll move to consider resolutions 25-04 and 2025-05. Approving 2 water supply assessment required under CEQA and Senate State Bill 610.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Vice President Vella,
Yes.
Director Covington,
Yes.
Director Schmidt,
Yes.
Director Zucca.
Yes.
President Wheeler.
Yes.
Now for the item field 5 feet.
It didn't this time. You didn't get the full thing this time in button paper, but thank you and thanks, Drew.
Oh, that's true. I didn't think about that. Yeah, I saw the PowerPoint, that was all.
Right.
Truckload.
Okay, moving on to agenda item 8B. Consider resolution 2025-07 approving the form and authorizing and directing execution of certain installment sale financing documents. Kat, do you want to split this or do you want to move directly to Bud and Rob?
I'll start it off and apologize that this item did kill a tree this time for sure. A lot of documents, but you know, as you know, the board members are well aware, this is something we've been talking about for quite a while. A lot of, you know, analysis and work and thought has gone into it. And a lot of work and support by Bud and Rob, and also Brian Quint is on too, who prepared all of these documents for us. So I'll hand it over to Bud and Rob, and I'm sure there'll be a good discussion and lots of questions, but that's what we need to do, just to make sure everyone's comfortable with this plan. But I think you're on mute.
I was. Okay, I am Bud Levine with Wolf Hansen. We've been your municipal advisor since 2016. And in 2016, we participated in the issuance of a COP for capital improvements, very similar to the project that we're talking about today. Brian Quint is here with us. He was the bond counsel in 2016 under the firm Quint Timmick. That's been dissolved with the retirement of his partner, and he's with the outstanding firm straddling Yokai, and he'll be the bond counsel for this particular transaction. And with me also is Rob Pankratz, who was not here in 2016, but has become a very important member of our team. And in fact, I'm going to turn this over to him to walk through the presentation with you, and then we'll all be available to answer questions. I do want to make a quick comment about the marketplace, about interest rates. And I've been doing this for an awfully long time, and I follow it very closely. And I do feel that this is a real opportune time to bringing this to market. The rates went up a month ago over the last month with the worry of inflation. They dropped down again the last couple of trading days, but there's an awful lot of factors in the marketplace, particularly with what's going on with the new administration of what they are or are not going to be able to accomplish, that all look very inflationary. And my experience in doing this over the many years, I see the handwriting on the wall that I think as we get into mid-year to the end of this year, you're going to see rates go up as a result of the worry about inflation. So I think we have a window here of the next 30 days where it'll be a very opportune time to be pricing the issue we're discussing tonight. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rob to walk you through the presentation, and then of course we're here for any questions that you may have.
Great. Thank you, Bud. Good evening, board members. I'm Rob Pankratz with Wolf Hansen, and I'm going to talk a little bit about this agenda item. We've got a brief presentation. It's broken down into 4 sections. First, I'm going to provide a little bit of background on how we got to where we are today. I'm going to talk about what we're asking the board to approve via the resolution tonight. I'll talk about our next steps if the resolution is approved, and then I'll go over the financing projections at this time. I'll stop at the end of each section to see if there's anything that members of the finance committee or staff or the financing team want to add, as well as open it up for questions after each section so I don't throw everything at y'all at once. So to start off with the background, in 2024, the district completed a rate study and subsequently instituted a new rate structure to support its capital improvement program, among other things. In support of its capital improvement program, the district preliminarily determined that it would issue 2 series of bonds to fund its projects, both in the form of certificates of participation, or COPs. A COP was to be funded this year in the approximate amount of $20 million to support the most urgent CIP priorities. And then a second COP was planned to be issued in 2026 in the approximate amount of $15 million to support additional capital improvements. Through a series of meetings over the past several months with the finance committee and staff, we've made sort of 2 key decisions that I want to cover right now. The first is that our group agreed that it's more prudent to issue a single series of financing this year to fund basically as much of the near-term CIP as we can get into this certificate, and then to forego a additional subsequent financing in 2026. So since we're only funding one COP, it's anticipated that it'll produce approximately $33 million of project funds. So changing from 2 separate financings to one is going to provide the following benefits. First, it'll provide a hedge against the potential for interest rates to rise, as Bud just spoke about, primarily due to changes in economic policy in Washington, D.C., or other unforeseen macroeconomic events. Second, it will provide a hedge against the potential future loss of the ability for public agencies and nonprofits and other exempt agencies to issue tax-exempt debt. Now, no formal proposal for this has been announced, but it's certainly something that's been talked about a lot in Washington and in the municipal finance circles and has been gaining a lot of traction. If they were to make a big change in this area, we're of the opinion that they wouldn't come for all public agencies and all tax exemption. They would come for some of the more fringe cases, probably on the healthcare side and the private activity side. But it certainly is a risk, and it's all over the news in the municipal finance world. And I'm sure, and I've heard from various members of the staff in the finance committee that it's certainly come across their desk too. So it would help us avoid any potential legislative, it help negate the effects of potential legislative changes in the future. The third benefit is that it would provide savings to the district in the form of cost avoidance due to eliminating duplicative professional services that would have to occur if you were to do two separate financings in 2 separate years. We estimate the value of this savings on a cash flow basis is approximately $500,000 over a 30-year period, with a present value savings of approximately $200,000. Additionally, doing one financing as opposed to two will save significant staff time, board time, and general administrative savings and headaches. The second decision that the Finance Committee has made is the committee determined that the financing should be sold via a competitive sale as opposed to a negotiated public offering. A competitive sale is the process that was used in 2016 when the district last issued a financing. And we, along with the Finance Committee, agreed due primarily to the high credit rating of the district and the fact that this transaction is a fairly standard transaction for California water districts. We strongly believe that this will be received well in the competitive market. So that's sort of the background on how we got here. If anyone wants to add anything or if there are any questions, now would be a great time. And if not, I'll move on to talking about today's actions in the resolution.
Rob, I
Great.
might want to add one thing. I've been doing this long enough that over the years, I think at least 3 times when there's been tax reform, the subject of tax exemption on municipal bonds has come up. In almost every case, they nibble at the edges. They keep the tax exemption, but they've taken away certain provisions of types of issuance that you can do. As recently as 2017, under the last tax reform, the big tax cut that was done in Trump's first term, they took away the right to do advance refundings, which was previously a big benefit to outstanding bond issues, but they left the tax exemption alone. I am of the opinion that that's probably going to be the case, although I do admit there's been more talk about it this time. But I think in the end of the day, they may make some revisions about private activity bonds, as Rob pointed out. But I think a straightforward water revenue from a district should be protected. But just to be sure, just to be careful, that's an added benefit of issuing them the bonds now before any legislative action takes place, which should take quite a few months before they're able to get that resolved.
And I'll just add that very timely, last week was the California Society of Municipal Finance Officers Conference, which I went to, and of course James also did. But it was a good time, to just chat with people and kind of get their thoughts. And of course, Bud and Rob have a great bit of experience, and we trust their advice. But it was nice to hear the very similar things coming from other experts in the field, just kind of affirming that this really is a very good time. There's no certainty it would get better, and it's more feeling that the interest rates will get worse if we were to wait. So,
yep.
And we did bring this discussion, I think it was mentioned to the Finance Committee as well. So.
Sure.
So the 30, I think one of the original ideas between splitting it, although I understand the additional cost, was the concern about actually being able to spend all the money. And 33 million is what is the proverbial snake eating a very large animal for a district this size. So, in terms of the projects that we have lined up, and the last round, we also, I think we're at 7 years on $20 million. and decided that we weren't in arbitrage, but it took us a lot longer to spend it than we had originally planned. So I just want to make sure that we're comfortable with the idea that we're going to be able to expeditiously spend the funding as well.
And I'd just like to remind the board that the requirements for spending the money are you have to have the intent right now to be able to spend 85% of the project funds within 3 years and 100% of the project funds within 5 years.
And we do have our 5-year CIP budget that we put together. That's where the $33 million number came from. That was the total that we have, projects programmed over the next 5 years. We know schedules slip, but so do the investors. We do have the intent, we have the projects, and if, our full CIP, if you recall, is about a $95 million CIP. If something were to happen to one of our projects, we have plenty, very worthwhile, very, good projects to benefit the system lined up, so.
That's pretty good evidence that your intent is to do that within that period. That looks good.
I'm sure our intent is good. The question was more around our capacity and can we, scale up to get the work actually done. So we might meet the criteria for wanting to spend it and having enough work lined up. But I just want to make sure that we're also thinking about the time frame the last round of capital projects took and what were the resources that it took to do the design, all that kind of stuff. We might be needing to issue larger projects because that did drag on a few years longer than we planned. So anyway, it's just an observation, making sure that we're keeping that in mind as we think about approving the entire 33 million.
Definitely
Just
noted.
a comment, when almost a year ago, when we made that we had that discussion about whether we should do one finance or two. One of the reasons why we went with two was because we were expecting that inflation would be going down and therefore interest rates would probably go down and we might be able to get a little better interest rate on the second
Fair enough, yeah.
pile of money. And we don't expect that's going to occur. Because otherwise there wasn't a good reason to potentially spend an additional $500,000 in expenses over the course of the.
No, absolutely, but it just doesn't do us any good to have paying interest on $15 million when we're not spending against it, right? For any longer than we need to, so.
There's another thing to keep in mind that is very unusual. In fact, I've 45 years I've been doing this. This is about the only period that I've ever seen this extended. And that is that because the Fed sets the short-term rates and the short-term rates are fairly high right now as an investor, where the bond market, worried about inflation, sets the longer-term rates, you have a situation where the short-term treasuries, as you know through your treasury program, are yielding a very high yield compared to historic standards. So that while you're waiting to spend the money, you're going to be earning almost as much, if not an amount equal to what you're paying in interest on a tax exempt rate, which gives you, an offset to any delay that you have about having money that you're paying interest on. You're earning almost as much, if not equal to what you'd be paying.
Louis, any comments?
We just need to become a bigger snake.
I guess my other comment would be that because half of the money that we're borrowing is going into building projects rather than pipeline projects, we have the advantage that we aren't going to be that dependent on outside agencies.
Yeah.
And having 2-year design phases for large projects.
I would have a lot more concern if we didn't have a big $15 million building project in the mix,
Yes.
or whatever it is.
Yes, I think there's
To your point, we went around and around during the finance committee
sure.
on this one.
Fair enough.
And it-
I
because,
won't relitigate it here. I wasn't there.
no,
Oh,
well,
but-
because even to me, I mean, these are, you know, pretty hard pills
Yeah,
to
yeah,
swallow, you know?
We are going to, have a lot of work to do
Yeah.
to try and keep the number of projects going the way we need to.
Right.
Because we have to get Folger done so that we can then start our Dairy
Yeah,
Lane
they're right now.
and get Dairy Lane finished in almost record time for the size of that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
5 years is not a long time, you know? Before you know it.
right. But we virtually would have two programs. One is the pipeline
Pipeline project,
and
yeah.
the recoding and various things, the new
Yeah.
tanks.
So it's got the COVID tanks that we want to
Yeah, the new
replace, and
tanks.
that's a $6 million, $7 million project.
Right. But there again, we have the advantage that that project isn't going to be dependent on outside agencies. The way some of the pipeline projects have been. And trying to coordinate with the city of Belmont.
And also keep in mind that the Coven Tank project, as well as the 101 undercrossing projects, have already been designed. So they've kind of been on pause and they need just a very small amount of rework. But they're basically shovel ready. So, yeah, we'll be moving on those quickly.
Yeah,
A question, maybe Bud was addressing this with pre-funding, but let's say a couple of years from now, interest rates go down. Is there any way we can make use of that?
Yes, the bonds will carry the standard bonds, and we want to keep it as standard as possible to encourage as many bidders. It would be a 10-year par call. In other words, the bonds would not be callable for a period of 10 years. At the 10th year and thereafter, they could be called from any source of funds that you have, either through a refunding or if you've developed excess funds that have been generated that you don't need for PAYGO or for other reasons, you could start retiring those bonds, yes.
I'd also like to add that if for whatever reason there's a large decline in interest rates next year, your 2016 COP becomes callable next year. So we could take advantage of a refinancing of that obligation to take advantage of rates at that time. However, the rates on the 2016 COP are already very, very attractive. So interest rates would need to go down quite a bit for a refinancing to pencil out.
Yeah, we pretty much caught very close to the low of the market when we priced those in 2016.
And is that refinancing only available at the 10-year mark, or is it any time after the 10-year mark?
It starts at 10 years and any time after, correct.
any other questions?
All right, I think we're ready to move on to the next section. So next, I'm going to talk about today's action and what the committee, the staff, and ourselves are recommending that you approve tonight. So today we are asking the board to give its final approval for a 30-year financing that would produce new project funds of approximately $33 million. If the board approves tonight's resolution, it will be approving essentially six different things. First, it will approve the financing so long as the financing is delivered in accordance with the resolution and the financing documents that are included in the agenda packet. Secondly, the resolution provides for binding not to exceed financing parameters that were reviewed, discussed, and determined at the Finance Committee meeting. And there are three binding parameters. The first is that the maximum par amount or face value of the financing cannot exceed $35 million. The second parameter is that the maximum annual debt service payment cannot exceed $2.2 million. And the third parameter is that the true interest cost, which is essentially the blended rate, including the underwriter's discount, the fee paid to the underwriting firm for selling the bonds, cannot exceed 4.75%. Those are our maximum parameters that under no circumstance can a financing move forward if it does not fall within all three of those parameters. The third thing that the resolution would approve is it would approve the form of the financing documents that are included in the resolution. The first document is the preliminary official statement. That's the selling and disclosure document that will be sent to potential underwriters and then all of their potential investor clients. It's something that's sent to anyone who is considering purchasing these certificates. The second document is the notice of intention to sell securities. That's the district's announcement to the market and to underwriters to be on the lookout for an upcoming competitive sale. The third document is the notice of sale, and that is the bidding instructions for underwriting firms and market participants that tells them when, where, how, and what all of our required parameters are for them to take into consideration when submitting a conforming bid. The fourth financing document is an acquisition agreement. And this is an agreement between the district and the CSDA Finance Corporation, in which the district will sell the project, which in this case is the capital improvements, to the CSDA Finance Corp. And in exchange, Mid-Peninsula will receive the project funds from the sale of certificates. A related document in the next document is the installment sale agreement. And this is executed and goes into effect at the same time as the acquisition agreement. This is also an agreement between the district and CSDA Finance Corp, which I refer to as the counterparty. And in this agreement, Mid-Peninsula reacquires its capital improvements in the project back from the counterparty. At the exact same time when it sells it right back. And in exchange, the counterparty receives installment payments from the district. At the first second that the transaction is effectuated, those installment payments are assigned by CSDA Finance Corp to the bond trustee and become the debt service payments. The trustee then takes those debt service payments to make the regular principal and interest payments to investors. So they're two sort of complicated agreements, but they create the flow of funds and the legal structure that we require to issue certificates of participation. The final document that the district is being asked to approve the form of tonight is the trust agreement, and that is the governing document that sort of directs the actions of the bond trustee in how it holds your project funds and how it makes principal and interest payments to investors and essentially every possible contingency that could have ever been thought of by a bond lawyer. So those are the summary of the form of documents that we're asking to be approved as part of this resolution. The fourth thing the resolution does is it authorizes the district's municipal advisor, that's Bud and myself from Wolf Hansen, to work in conjunction with the staff to direct the competitive sale of the certificates, to receive the bids, and then to award the winning bid. The winning bid will be awarded on the basis of the lowest true interest cost. And again, the true interest cost is your cost of financing inclusive of fees paid to the underwriting firm that's ultimately the successful bidder of the bonds. We got a couple questions from board members about this specific authorization. And we just want to reiterate that the authority that you're giving us is very limited. The authority that we have is to accept a bid based on a predetermined formula approved by the board. The other things that we're authorized to do are reject losing bids, reject non-conforming bids, and to either postpone or cancel the sale if there's some big unforeseen problem, some macroeconomic event, the financial markets shut down for a couple of days. Those are really the only instances where that would happen. The fifth thing that the resolution does is it authorizes the board and staff to take any necessary actions after the approval of this resolution to complete the financing. And that would include things such as signing documents and just filling out the closing paperwork that's required. And then lastly, the resolution has an exhibit at the end, Exhibit A, and that contains our good faith estimates for the financing. These are our best estimates for what the results of the financing will be based on the market conditions of February 17th, in accordance with Government Code Section 5852.1. This is a required disclosure. I invite you to look at those good faith estimates, and if you have any questions, please ask us. At the end of my presentation, I'm going to go into the financing projections and go into quite a bit more depth than what is required for us to disclose as part of the good faith estimates. So hang on till then if you want to talk numbers and we can get into the details. Next, I'm going to talk about next steps, but before I get into that, again, if anyone from the board, finance committee, staff, Bud, Brian, want to comment or ask any questions, now would be a time to do so.
Just one question. You mentioned that you guys have the ability to reject non-conforming bids. Sort of what, I guess, I don't need all the details, but I guess the criteria around which you consider them non-conforming, especially if like the lowest is non-conforming. What, you know, what's the balance there between if they have the lowest total interest cost, true interest cost, but they also happen to be non-conforming? How do you differentiate?
All non-conforming bids will be rejected because we don't have the authority to award a bid to a non-conforming bid. That's not authorization we're seeking, and that's not authorization that would be granted through this resolution.
It should be mentioned, and sorry to interrupt, that we do this all the time with competitive bids, and the marketplace understands how to bid. And the likelihood that we're going to actually get any non-conforming bids is very low. We do this all the time, and I would say for the most part, 99% of the time, all the bids are conforming. So that's really does not become an issue, and it really comes down to the bidder that provides the best deal for the district, the lowest true interest cost.
Great, thank you for that.
Although, just to follow up on that, now the part of the resolution that I think you're referring to, Rob, is section 7, and that actually doesn't refer to non-conforming bids. It says that the municipal advisor can reject any and all bids and waive any irregularity or informality in any bid. Is an irregularity what you mean by non-conforming, or are those two different turns of phrase?
I think irregularity means the same thing as non-conforming.
Okay, so we would be giving you discretion to waive irregularities. So in that case, you could potentially do that and accept a lower bid that had an irregularity in it?
No, that's not likely. And also, I might like to add one other thing, that these bids are handled on a bidding platform that is used nationally for the purpose of bidding out municipal bonds just like this one. And it is all done electronically, and the bidders all have the same inputs that each others have. So again, the likelihood of an irregular bid or a non-conforming bid, highly, highly unlikely. The bidding platform directs the bidders exactly what to do and where to do it and how to do it. So I think that the issue about irregular bids or non-conforming bids, that may be a carryover from back in the day when we didn't do this electronically on the internet.
In the 8 years
That makes
that I've
sense.
been
Maybe
doing this,
just
I've never
change.
seen a non-conforming bid.
Yeah, so maybe we just might want to amend the resolution before we approve it to make it consistent with what the representations are.
We can change irregular to non-conforming in the resolution before it's approved, if that's desirable. That certainly is the intent, and we're not trying to do something that's not correct. So fine, to make them consistent is not a bad idea.
Yeah, we just strike that whole end of that clause.
I agree.
Yeah, okay.
Makes sense.
Hearing no other comments or questions, I'll move on to what our next steps would be if the resolution is approved tonight. The first next step is we will be finalizing the rating on the certificates. That is scheduled for Monday. We've been in conversations back and forth with S&P, and we expect that rating to come in on time. And we expect that rating to match the rating that was just reaffirmed on the 2016 COP by S&P just in the fourth quarter of last year. After the rating is finalized, we will finalize bond insurance if we decide to utilize bond insurance. At this time, we expect that we will not be utilizing bond insurance because the district's bond rating or the rating that we expect the district to get on Monday is just as good as the rating of the top municipal bond insurers. So we don't really see any credit enhancement or reduction in the interest rate that would be substantial enough to offset the premium that you would pay for the insurance policy. But if for whatever reason on Monday the rating comes in lower than what we're expecting, we'll re-engage the insurers, have that conversation again, and see if there is an insurance policy that would lower the interest rate on the financing substantially enough to offset that cost. But at this time, we don't expect that to happen. After the rating and insurance are both finalized, the offering documents, which include the preliminary official statement and the notice of sale, will be distributed and mailed out to underwriters all around the country. And at that time, we will begin our marketing period. That's scheduled for March 6th, next week at the end of the week. And then we have our sale date planned for March 19th, just a little bit under 2 weeks after that. Between the mailing date and the sale date, we would like to offer to host a finance committee meeting or a different ad hoc committee meeting to review the competitive bond sale procedure in depth with any board member, staff member, stakeholder who might be interested in learning more about that process and sort of getting a more granular view of how these things are priced and sold. That offer stands, and please reach out to the staff if you would like to participate in that type of meeting, and we'll be more than happy to coordinate that.
Actually, if I could ask the board members if there's interest, because we could do it as a special meeting study session easily if there's more interest than just the finance committee.
If it's gonna be happening close to March 19th, I can have interest in South Korea.
Yeah, Zoom.
If it's gonna be a posted meeting,
Um,
but I'll be there I'll be a day ahead, so we'll have to figure that one out.
You'll have to figure out the time.
I was thinking of maybe in New York. I think I'll be back by then.
Well, it depends on exactly when it is.
Oh, yeah, well, haven't set a date yet, right?
No, it's in a day,
Oh,
exactly. I'm just seeing the sale date March 19th, and I know I'm in South Korea by then, so.
Oh,
But we could do it any time between the time we send the notices out to the day before, which would be the 18th. So there's quite a few days there that could be utilized for this.
well, it's gonna have to be a special meeting anyway.
Yeah, okay, so we'll poll the board members and find a good date and time that works and call it a special meeting then.
Yeah.
Great. So as
If
I
it's
said,
before the 12th, you can send in person. If it's after the 12th, I'd have to be remote.
so sale date, March 19th, as I said, and then we will close just short of 2 weeks later on April 1st. We are planning to come back to the board to report the final results of the sale, either at the April board meeting or the March board meeting, depending on agenda load, staff available, all that stuff. We'll leave that up to you guys. Sometimes it's good to do it when it's really fresh. In March, it will be once all the rates are locked and the pricing is finalized, but before the financing has officially closed. If we go in March or if we go in April, the financing will have closed by then. And then lastly, I'm going to jump into our financial projections for this project. I've got a couple tables and schedules here. The first one shows the estimated sources and uses for the financing. So the sources of funds contain two sources: the par amount or face value of the certificates, which we're currently estimating to be issued in the amount of $32,680,000. In addition to the face value of the certificates, the sale will generate we estimate that the sale will be structured to generate a net premium of a little over $850,000 for a total source of funds of $33,536,000. I'll explain on the next schedule a little bit more about the net premium and how that's generated. So with one sec on that. In terms of the uses of funds, we have three scheduled uses for the funds: a $33 million deposit to the project fund for the district, estimated costs of issuance for the financing of $291,000. And then we've estimated an underwriter's discount of $245,000. Ultimately, the fee to the underwriter will be part of the competitive bid process. It's a calculated part of the true interest cost. So when we're awarding the bid based on the true interest cost, that is inclusive of all of the underwriting fees. Now, we don't like to necessarily put stringent caps on the underwriting fees, because if someone's going to charge you more fees but get you a lower all-in cost of financing, it is worth it to pay the higher fee from a purely mathematical basis. So that's what we've estimated that the fee will be. And then you see the total sources of funds and the total uses of funds balance. Moving to the next schedule, here we show the estimated bond debt service, including principal and interest payments, the coupon yield, the coupon rate, and the yield for each bond. We are, based on comparable sales in the market recently, we anticipate that the certificates will be sold with a combination of 5% and 4% coupons. However, the yield to the district, the cost of funds for the district, will be much lower than the coupon rate that you pay, with the yield ranging from 2.85% in the first year, the first bond, down to 4.16% in the last bond. The difference between what you pay, the coupon, and your cost of funds, the yield, is what generates the net premium. So you're only paying the coupon rate on the face value of the bonds, the par amount of bonds. The net premium is not charged any interest. So the difference between the coupon and the yield is how the net premium is generated.
Rob, you might want to point out, in a mathematical sense, if you're selling a bond at par, you're selling it at 100 cents on the dollar, 100 cents equal to the face value of the bond. If you're selling it at a premium, you're selling that 5% coupon at 105 in order for the yield to equal that lower amount. And that extra amount goes into the revenues being received from the sale of the bonds. That's why it generates 800 and some odd thousand of this estimate, more than the face amount of the bonds. And all of that goes towards the project fund. And it also produces, of course, a lower interest rate than you would if it was just 5% at par.
Virtually all tax exempt bonds that are sold at a competitive sale are sold with this type of coupon and yield structure. And it really has a minimal effect on the district. Really, the effect is investors want to be able to go and say they have 5% coupon bonds, they have 4% coupon bonds, a nice round number that they can put in a portfolio or some other type of packaged investment vehicle to meet their criteria. From our point of view and from the district's point of view, it's really just a marketing strategy that's employed by tax exempt bond issuers.
Bond buyers. Yeah.
So we are estimating at this time that the district will have average annual debt service payments of approximately $1,920,000 a year from this financing over a 30-year period. That equates to total debt service over the period, assuming no refinancing, of $57.9 million, of which of that $25.2 million will be interest. A few summary statistics on our estimates. We will be structuring this so that the district has the ability to have a par call beginning December 1st of 2035. It's approximately a 10-year par call, and then the bonds will be callable at par anytime thereafter. Their final maturity will be December 1st of 2054, 30-year financing. The true interest cost that we are anticipating at this time, with a little bit of buffer, is 4.07%. That is the district's cost of funds for all the bonds, inclusive of the underwriter's discount. We also show an all-in true interest cost, which is similar to the true interest cost, but also takes into account all of the professional services that the district has brought on for this project. that doesn't include the underwriter. So that would be our fee, the trustee's fee, bond counsel's fee, all of those things. So we include that in your cost of funds. That produces your all interest cost. And we are estimating at this time that that rate will be a 4.14%. This is the all insured interest cost is what you can like really compare to like an APR on a mortgage. It's your all in cost. These estimated schedules would produce an arbitrage yield on the bonds of 3.99%. That would be the maximum amount that you are allowed to earn on those funds before they are spent. That's the arbitrage yield. Anything that you earn on the funds above the arbitrage yield should be rebated to the IRS. Moving on to the last page in the last schedule. Here we show the estimated debt service for the 2025 COP, the actual debt service for the 2016 COP, and then we show the total debt service amongst the two to give you a picture of what your annual debt load would look like. And based on our estimates, it'd be annual debt service of approximately $3 million each year until the 2016 COP is paid off, at which point it'll drop to a little over $1.9 million a year. The fiscal year 2025 number is a little bit up in the air. We're still having ongoing conversations with staff as to whether the district wants to and has budgeted to make the first interest payment in June of 2025 after the closing of the financing, or if, because it's not in the budget, the district wants to push that interest payment out to December of 2025, which would be in the following fiscal year. That's one of the last final decisions that'll be made before the documents are mailed out to the market and underwriters and whatnot.
And if I can add, later in this meeting, we'll be discussing the mid-year budget. This first payment was not budgeted for in this fiscal year because we hadn't gone through this whole process when the budget was developed. So we'll ask the board if you'd like us to add that to mid-year or to delay the payment at that point.
And we can do either, so it's flexible.
There's really no effect on the financing. It's really just a district preference on when it would like to make its first payment. And that concludes our presentation. We're happy to answer any and all questions you may have. So thank you for your time.
I did have a question on the arbitrage yield. Is that maximum amount that you've got here on the projection? Is that over the entire life of the bond, or how often is that calculated where we might have to do a rebate if we?
The
earn more than
the arbitrage yield is determined at the time of the pricing of the issue and the closing. So that number that Rob mentioned, the 3.9% arbitrage yield, is the maximum rate that you can earn on all of your idle funds. Now, the issue is that you only have to rebate to the federal government every 5 years, and the calculation is a cumulative calculation. So that means that if you earned 3% in the first 4 years, and then you earned 6% in the 5th year, you would average it down so that you would only have to rebate if the cumulative amount exceeded the 3.9%. So that number is fixed at the time of the issue, but that calculation of whether or not you've exceeded the arbitrage yield in your investments is done every 5 years, and it's a cumulative calculation.
You know, Brian, it's only been recently that we've had to deal with that because the earnings for many, many years on project funds and the available funds has been far below the bond rate. I have a question for you. If they spend all the money in the 5 years and they've over-earned in the early years on a larger amount, but have not earned enough in the last 2 years before they finish paying off, so that the average yield is still within the arbitrage, that's okay, right?
That's right. It's a cumulative number. So you'd build in, or you'd mix in the higher and the lower, and in the end, you'd see whether or not you exceeded 3.9.
Okay. So that should be fairly easy to do with, it looks like, the schedule that you're going to have. So you're going to be able to actually earn a little bit more maybe in the early years than you're paying on the bonds. And then that will diffuse as you get to the fifth year. So by the fifth year, we'll be sure that you're not in an arbitrage situation. You still do the calculation, but you're not going to owe anything. And there's no penalty, right, Brian? It's just the pure payback of the excess.
Right, and in fact, there is no obligation to do a calculation if you know.
Right.
And Kat, you're gonna get, and you probably already do get, information from your trustee on a periodic basis. You'll know whether or not you even came close to the arbitrage yield maximum, so that there's no reason to hire anybody or do a calculation if you absolutely know that you're not near the breaking point.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but if we get the work done faster than 5 years, let's say we get it done in 4, do we get to average in 12 zeros into that amount?
No.
Okay. I was
Good
just
try.
wondering what
Good try.
incentive we have done.
But again, you're going to spend the money in 3 years, and since there's no reserve fund and there's not going to be anything after you spend all the money, you're going to be done. The issue about exceeding your arbitrage yield is going to become a moot point after the money's spent.
Okay.
Can I ask a point of clarification from earlier conversation? So Director Covington had raised a question about modifying the resolution so that we strike the language with regard to waiving a non-conforming bid or irregularity. Then this is a question for Brian. Brian, I'm the Deputy General Counsel. I work with Julie and Allison, so it's nice to meet you. But in the construction world, the idea of having an irregularity and waiving an irregularity would give the district the ability, for instance, to, if you have, say, a 5-page bid and every page requires a signature, but somebody forgets to sign one of the pages, the district could waive that and say it's still a binding bid. It's not a big deal. We want to move forward with it. So my concern with striking this clause entirely is that, and this is the question for Brian, if we strike the clause in section 7, second to last sentence where we say, and waive any irregularity or informality in any bid, what's the risk to the district? Should we reword it instead to address the concern that was raised earlier?
I think the language is fine, frankly, in the resolution. If we want to add a sentence relating to non-conforming, we can, but I agree with you. I think that we want to have the flexibility here, as you say, to take that sentence out. I think it would reduce the flexibility that the district has regarding the bids. Again, I think this is going to end up being kind of a moot point, because in the bidding of municipal bonds, there really isn't much room for irregularities or nonconformity in the bids. So it all may be moot.
And, the concern that I was brought up, the same bells went off in my head with like irregularity. I was thinking construction,
Yeah.
right? So as a suggestion, I guess the only issue that I really have with it is that it's the on behalf of the district at its discretion. We could just simply say, with the district approval. In
Yeah,
other words, like, what's the, and the concern that I had is that we'd be waiving the irregularity. Maybe there's 0.0001 chance of this happening, the theoretical. We'd be waiving an irregularity, and we could have been getting a lower rate, or irregularity has to be ruled out. But, what's that balancing act? Because sometimes you want to waive the irregularity because it's just a signature.
Yeah.
Maybe it doesn't matter.
Yeah, maybe the suggestion that I would make is in the resolution. I don't know if we're up to the point of discussing the resolution's approval, but the sentence now says the municipal advisor on behalf of the district may in its discretion reject. And I would just change the words in its discretion to at the direction or with the consultation of the district, something like that, rather than it's pure discretion. I think that would give us the flexibility we want, and it would not give municipal advisor any undue discretion.
We would just like to make sure that there be somebody from the district and authority available when the bids are received on that day, so that if that issue comes up, we have somebody to talk to about that.
And that shouldn't be.
Would that address your concern, Director
That would
Covington?
address it.
Okay, great, thank you.
And
So,
then we-
so when the resolution comes up for motion, the person making the motion can suggest the minor modification in that section 7 before it's brought to a vote.
Perfect, and I have it written down.
Okay. Do we have any other discussion about the resolution or?
I have a few questions, more state process questions. So would it be appropriate at this time to ask those? Yeah. Okay, great. So this is my first board meeting with the district. We've got
And you get to
me-
vote on $33 million bond.
That I was up to the challenge, and I do feel like I have gotten a lot of information and absorbed it very quickly, thanks to Kat being available. So I had some conversations with our general manager. Wolf Hansen answered some questions from me. Thank you very much. And I had the opportunity to speak with our Hansen Bridget finance experts, and to look at also the quality and the credentials of all of our advisors and our legal advisors, which are very impressive. Appreciate all of the work on behalf of the finance committee, I know you guys have been deep in this for many, many, many months. And the fact that this is sort of a plain vanilla transaction, we're not doing anything fancy or sort of outside of the norms. And we also have a very, very strong balance sheet, and I don't have any particular concerns with us being able to meet the finance commitments under the bond. But my background is in law, and so I'm always very interested in representations and covenants and the obligations that we are taking on and the disclosures that we're making to the market to sell the bond securities. And so I do have some questions. I just wanted to clarify the process that we went through to come up with the preliminary statement. So I'm, Kat or anyone else, if you could just talk through what was the process to come up with the disclosures. And particularly, were there any disclosure issues that you debated when you were coming up with what you thought was going to be appropriate to put to market?
Sure. So Brian sent us the first draft of the POS document, which was based very closely on what was prepared in 2016 for the prior issuance. So we started with that, and we went through it. Myself, Brenna, James, went through it. Well, I went through line by line and updated the information. It was compiled by several of us. I had Drew pull some information on the water use, updated, sections on the water supply. Obviously, all the financials are updated. And I think I went through every page of that 4 times in developing it. So, it's all, representations from us staff, including James on the financials.
Fantastic. And are there any disclosures that you debated or anything that you're looking at now that sort of gives you pause at whether it should or shouldn't be in there, or how are you comfortable?
No, I mean, we're a very transparent district, and I think pretty much, if not everything in there, is already in other public documents. We just are what we are.
Also, there was a very thorough discussion with S&P not that long ago about any of your operations and the numbers, and we got a very good rating, the AA rating from them, which is an extremely high rating for a individual water district like this.
But what did you mention SFPUC's rating is?
AA.
Oh, I thought SFPUC. San Francisco. I thought they had a lower rating.
Oh, I'm not sure. Rod,
Or
do you
maybe it
know?
was S&P that told us. I think maybe it was S&P themselves who mentioned that SFP,
They may be
that San
double A.
Francisco actually has a lower rating than we
Yeah, I
do.
think that's right. Yeah, I think you're right. You're ahead of me. I think that it might be a double A minus.
It's
Yeah,
double A
S&P
minus.
Yeah, they're
S&P
double A
has them at
minus.
double A
That's right.
minus.
Good catch. Yeah, and you're double A.
Yeah, we're expecting the certificates to be rated double A. The district itself is rated double A plus.
Yep.
Certificates always get one notch reduction in rating from the issuer credit rating.
And we, as the finance committee, also had a chance to look at those. And as far as I could tell, it was all information that we'd seen before, either as part of other documents or ongoing reporting functions. So,
No, but it's good to come back up again and with
yes,
the entire report. This is good discussion.
Does anybody remember what the last rating was that we had on the last issuance for the bonds? I seem to recall it was double A minus because we were double A.
Double check.
Are we actually double A plus? Is that our rating?
Your rating as a district is double A plus. The bond issue is double A because of the structure. They always rate a structure like this, one notch below the rating of the
Yeah.
issuer itself. I think the last one, Rob, wasn't it double A for the district and double A minus for the?
I'm pulling up the official statement. Let's see. It was double A for the bonds, double A plus for the district.
Oh, okay.
And
Okay.
that rating was just reaffirmed in December on the 2016 certificates.
Right.
And that's the rating we expect to receive on Monday.
Yeah.
Okay. I have
Anything
one
else?
more question. if-
sure.
Oh, by the way,
So,
Please.
my second question was just on our continuing obligations. And specifically, Rob, if you could talk a little bit about what our continuing disclosure obligations are on the certificates and, you know, how we keep on top of that.
Yeah,
kind of
so
work.
your continuing disclosure obligations under the 2025 certificates will be identical to the obligations you already have under the existing 2016 certificates. So you'll continue to file the same reports that you're already filing through Dan Bergman of IG Service, who works with the staff to prepare those reports on an annual basis. Those are uploaded to EMMA, the Electronic Municipal Market Access platform, where all bond investors can access those reports. And by issuing the 2025 COP, you'll be adding somewhere between 15 and 30 new QSIPs to the input when you upload that report.
Okay, and I haven't looked at the 2016 installment contract, but is there any covenant in the current contract? Particularly, I was looking at the insurance requirements for the project that would be an additional obligation or cost that's above and beyond our current business practice?
No, the two documents are identical.
Okay. Thank you.
excellent. Very good.
Anything else? Okay.
Isn't that enough?
It's enough for me. Does anyone wish to put forward a resolution or a motion? for the resolution?
I'll move to approve the resolution
As modified?
as modified to provide collaborative authority on waiving irregularities, or however district council would choose to phrase that.
Really, too many notes here, sorry, a second. Was to modify section 7, second to last sentence, to strike in its discretion and replace it with the consultation of the district. Does that sound right, Brian?
Yes, that's fine.
Sorry, I was on mute. That's perfect.
Sounds good. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Your last form.
You guys can deal with it afterwards.
Why not?
Why not?
We know what's to blame now.
That's right.
The guy who's not here, okay.
It's his fault.
Director Zuka,
Yes.
Director Schmidt,
Yes.
Director Covington,
Yes.
Vice President Bella,
Yes.
President Wheeler.
Yes. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, everyone.
Yes, thanks for a very, very complete and informative discussion today. This was great.
All right.
Guys, thank
Okay.
you.
Going on to item 8C. Discuss frequency of IG service accountability reports. Pat,
Yes.
you or Rena?
I'll start and Rena can fill in with some history if I miss anything. So this actually is very similar to one of Director Covington, or related to Director Covington's, one of her last questions regarding what is our ongoing disclosure. So there are annual reports that we file through Dan Bergman of IGS Service. He has been doing it since the start of our 2016 COPs. And you know, in 2016, the board actually requested not only for him to do the required annual dissemination report, but to do one additional report kind of mid-year, as well as the presentation twice a year to the board, just for kind of extra comfort, extra, you know, transparency and accountability, just to do the review. So again, you know, those extra reports are not required. But the question that I want to pose to the board is, you know, do you see value and do you want to continue those extra reports with the new financing? And in the report here, we have the cost of the additional, it's about $1,800 a year, which of course is pretty minimal, depending on whether or not you see value in them. So.
And just to add to that, we're gonna continue to pay Mr. Bergman for the 2016 report. He's still gonna continue to do that. And so those reports cost $1,600, and what he's saying, because doing the 2025 reporting is just like a small add-on, so to speak, to the 2016, he's just saying it's just another $500. So I mean, it's just a very nominal fee for the work that is done to make the people who have the bonds feel good about what the district's doing. This is why.
I mean, for me personally, I think especially since we have two new board members coming on, that, you know, we ought to be doing these updates at a fairly frequent level. For the amount of money that we're talking about, I mean, you know, especially as we get this off the ground and get everybody familiar with the process, I don't see a reason why we stop now or reduce the scope.
Yeah, we like the idea too. I mean, Kat and I were talking about it, thought it was going to be a good idea to continue with these, call them accountability reports. So at the back of the report is what one of his accountability reports looks like. He literally listed all the different projects that were undertaken with the 2016 COPs. And every, you know, every time that there was a payment request made to the trustee, you know, went out, he would tabulate that, and he kept track to see Ms. Covington looking at the bar chart, just showing how the money was spent over time type thing. But you also see above the table up above, just talking about how the project money was spent over time. So it just, he did a really nice job. He talked with us, how he thought he'd laid out, but just did a really nice job of just kind of sharing the information. Just really another way of being transparent with our ratepayers.
Yeah, no, and I really liked it because it sort of gave me the confidence that there's not just $33 million in the bank that staff has access to, that we have sort of independent people monitoring the money and where it's going and what it's being spent on, and then we get that report, you know, from him. So I personally like the process.
I appreciate looking at the report, so.
Yeah, I have no problem with continuing to do it. I don't know that he has to appear in person, which I guess is what he started out doing.
I thought he was doing it quarterly at the beginning.
It was quite often. I think you're right, it's quarterly.
I think we backed off the same.
Yeah, and then we backed off, and it's twice a year. Yeah.
Right. My assumption was that it was more of the fact that since the board had never had a bond process,
Mhm.
that there was some concerns that,
Learning curve,
yes,
yeah,
that we ought to be able to keep track of it
yeah.
effectively. So,
It's beneficial for staff too.
because I remember it was every 3 months and we scaled it back to every 6 months.
Yeah, the last couple of years, you scaled it back.
But it obviously it doesn't require a whole lot of money for him to do it.
Well, he's got a system set up now, so
Yeah.
I mean, I did pretty, I mean, he would call in and say, okay, what has been spent these last few months, and we just fed him the information, and then he would just compare it. Take a look at it, and compare it with the financials and so on, and put the report together. So he's got a method.
Right. And a lot of the information is already in James's report. There's a statement on what the status of the capital program is every month in his report. But it's in a different format and it isn't quite as elaborate.
It's budget based.
If I could point out also, so, we do provide Dan with information, as he's preparing his reports, but he's also copied on the requisitions from BNY, the holding company, every time we request a requisition as well. So he sees it and he knows every time we pull money.
You want to continue then with twice a year? Okay.
I don't think we require a vote for that. It's just a consensus.
Correct, it's just a discussion.
But thank you. So item 8B. Receive a report on the annual assessment and reporting on internal assessment and reporting on internal controls.
Yep.
So James?
Yeah, thank you. So if you remember last year in July, let me back up a little bit. Last year in April, we received a request from the grand jury for the county of San Mateo about certain aspects of our operations, particularly for related to internal controls. They have noted throughout the state and the country that, there's instances of fraud, waste, and abuse, and they wanted to make sure that local agencies had a mechanism in place to be able to monitor, to develop internal controls, to monitor internal controls and report on internal controls that protect and safeguard the assets of the district or whichever agencies. So they put out a survey to 72 agencies throughout the county. That's school districts, special districts, cities. They put it to the county as well, the county assessors and auditor controller's office. They received 54 responses back, and then they interviewed 28 more agencies, and we were one of the 28. So they went more in depth with those 20. So with that, they compiled the results and they released the report at the end of June. I think it was June 27th or so of last year. And we were required to provide a response by within 90 days back to the county or back to the grand jury. And we had submitted a response, or we approved the response on in our July meeting saying, okay, we acknowledge that these are findings and we're gonna make corrections. The findings were we didn't do an annual assessment of our internal controls for the agency. We do have internal controls. We just didn't do an annual assessment to make sure that they're operating effectively and together. And then the second finding was related to, we didn't report on that assessment back to the board. There was a third finding that we did not have, that was not included, that was not assessed, quote unquote, against us. And let me pull that one up. They said that one was fine.
That one was related to having done a risk assessment
Yes.
on our financial controls, and the district had done one of those following the defalcation that happened many years ago, but we provided that to the grand jury, so we did not get that finding.
Thank you. So the two items that we had to do was basically assess our internal controls and then report back to the board. The deadline to assess the controls was to, the board was supposed to direct us to do it by March 31st of this year. And then we're supposed to report back to you by June of this year. So here we are 4 months ahead. We said we're going to be doing it by the end of March. The internal control structure that they were citing within the grand jury report, they actually cited two different sets. One is called the Green Book, and it's published by the Government Accountability Office. It's primary audience is to federal agencies. So we're talking DHS, FEMA, all the federal agencies are required to follow these Green Book standards. The other set, which is more commonly used everywhere else, is called COSO, the Committee of Sponsoring Organizations. They developed this framework back in 1992. They updated it in 2003 after the WorldCom and Enron scandals, and after the Sarbanes-Oxley Act was implemented, and then they subsequently updated to in 2013 to talk about enterprise resource management. So that one is the more comprehensive basis. Both sets have 5 compliance or 5 areas where you need to address internal controls, as well as 17 different attributes that they talk about. And so we focus more on the COSO cube is what we call it. You know, there's a graphic related to that cube. So the 5 main areas that we were looking at the internal controls are the control environment, that's shown at the top. The risk assessment, which is what we have done in our reporting to you. Control activities, and that's our day-to-day activities that relates to how we process accounts payable, how we process accounts receivable, or, you know, receipts, how we protect the assets of the district. What are the control points associated with that? The next one is information and communication. So how do we get this information to the stakeholders of the district? So whether they're financial users or they're the board or anybody else. And then monitoring, because controls are not stationary, they evolve over time. They change, you know, if you have somebody that leaves, you have to adjust your internal controls accordingly. But there should be a process in place that is associated with that. So over the past several months, we've gone through and we've evaluated the internal controls for the agency. One thing that the grand jury report allows for is to not necessarily disclose our control points, because when you put that in a public environment, bad actors could use that to their advantage and try and manipulate the system, essentially, right? It can be something as simple as somebody sends an email, says, oh, this vendor's changed address, you know, please change it in your system, and then the checks start going to there without that verification, right? If they know that there's that control point missing. So we don't want to necessarily disclose those. So my report is more on, it's higher level, and it's associated, and what I do in this report is I point to the different policies that we've adopted. So for example, last year we adopted, right around the same time as the grand jury report, we adopted a financial management policy that talks about our cash handling policy, talks about debt management. It's got a number of different policies, investment policy. So I point to that and in relation to those control components. You'll see a lot of repetition in the report because they do overlap. So when you look at the coastal cube, the control environment, risk assessment, control activities, they all overlap with one another because they're supposed to work together. Which is why you'll see some of the repetition in the control activities or the focus points in there. And then finally in the report, there's the final assessment of whether or not the controls are actually working. And management's is of the opinion that the control environment, risk assessment, control activities, information and communication, monitoring activities, they're all present, they're all functioning, and they're all working together. So we will be updating this once a year at the bare minimum, as the grand jury report requires us to do. But we don't expect any significant changes. So let me just go through the sections real quick. I talk about the control environment here as our primary. Without the control environment set, nothing else matters, because you could have the tone at the top that says anything goes. So therefore control activities don't work. Risk assessment, well, what does risk assessment mean when management says you can do whatever you want? So this is why I point to that financial management policy, because this is the board directing management to follow these policies. It's your guiding principles telling management how to follow that. So that's commitment to integrity and ethical value. I've also pointed out that the district has earned the District Transparency Certificate of Excellence in relation to its ethics policy, because I think that's super important to highlight that this district, the board is not going to do anything funky or untoward. You are stewards of the financial assets of the district. You demonstrate independence and management from management and exercise oversight of the development and performance of the system of internal controls. Again, you provided that input. There's a finance committee meeting. Those are the elements that are demonstrating that the board has that tone at the top that goes with ethical values. And you're providing that oversight. The other piece to that is you're holding other folks accountable. So within the financial management policy, there's a whole, or not financial management policy, the human resources policy, personnel manual. There's a whole, if you do not follow our policies, this is the ramifications. And that is followed. So Allison does a good job with making sure that that's enforced. Allison and Kat do. So we do have those controls in place to establish the control environment. Any questions on control environment? I know this sounds like radio instructions. So this stuff is super interesting to me, but I know people can get lost in the details. So if no questions, I'll go into the risk assessment. So the risk assessment is fairly comprehensive in that it talks about operational choices. There's external financial reporting objectives, like we just talked about with the bond, and making certain disclosures to outside entities. This also encapsulates the audit. Internal reporting objectives. This is, people want to know what the budget to actual is. I'm looking at it from a treasurer's lens or, a finance officer's lens. We want to make sure that the results of the operations to date are reflective of what the board is telling us what to do. So that's where the budget to actual comes into play. That's just an example. There's also external non-financial reporting objectives. We want to mitigate risks associated with non-financial. So one of the things that we talked about in our finance committee meeting was, what do we do for an earthquake? How do we mitigate those risks? Oh, well, we have this EOC manual that we can point to, and that the district has actually done that. So that's what we're talking about with the risk assessment. We have demonstrated, I feel that we have demonstrated that we have performed the risk assessment. This document is basically consolidating all those pieces into one document. So yeah, an organization considers the potential for fraud in assessing the risks to achievement of objectives. Fraud is specifically addressed in the financial management policy, so that risk tends to be mitigated, with all the different policies working in conjunction with one another. All right, so that's two components. Questions on risk assessment? Excellent. Control activities, I don't want to go too far into the weeds with this one. When I was talking earlier that this relates to our actual activities, our day-to-day operations. This talks about how we're processing our payments going to vendors, going to contractors. This talks about how we're collecting payments, how we're billing folks. We do have a set of policies and procedures that dictate that. That we'll be tightening up to making sure that they're well documented. But we do have those procedures in place to make sure that there is a review process for all the types of transactions. I'll just use tonight as an example. For any debt issuance, the board is required to review and approve all debt issuances. For accounts payable, there's somebody inputs the accounts payable, somebody reviews the accounts payable, and then somebody signs the checks along with the support documentation that they can request. So those kind of review points. The key thing about control activities is, I call it ARC. for segregation of duties, it's authorization, recording, and custody. So you want to make sure at least one of those things is broken and is not by the same person. So you don't want somebody to authorize an invoice. The same person who authorized an invoice should not input the invoice and then has custody of the checks to sign the checks and pay it out, right? Because then that person could just pay themselves. So you want to make sure that that chain is broken with, so those are the control activities, that we have for the district.
And how do you verify that?
So there's a couple of ways we can spot check. For one, this is why we put together so I'm gonna use AP as an example. We have the report that goes to the board every month for all the warrants that are issued throughout the previous month. So the board has an opportunity to review that. There is a log to verify check numbers that make sure that they're sequential. Then we have somebody else doing a bank reconciliation that is completely independent. And then we have the external auditors who come by and they will test a sample of transactions. So there's multiple ways to verify depending on the transaction cycle. Yeah, good question. All right, any questions on control activities?
And the reason I asked is because that was what was broken in the issue that we had.
Okay, yeah, so AP is typically where you see the most theft come through. And so there's multiple control points. There's eyes looking at it from different viewpoints. So there's the eyes of people processing the transactions, signing the checks. Then there's my eyes coming from way outside, and then there's another set of eyes coming from the bank rec. So there's different ways of looking at the information to make sure that the information is sound. So yeah.
There's a lot of sunshine in our processes now. Time Matt was, or Director Zuga was referring to before. All the district's finances were handled by one person who never went on vacation, never got, took sick time. And our processes are entirely different than when that happened.
And to be clear, this was 2 general managers ago as well, so.
Information and communication systems. So this is making sure that our information so for example, if Springbrook, our financial information is sound. So this is why I'm reviewing transactions on a periodic basis to make sure that it all makes sense, that the transactions are categorized correctly, and then that information gets compiled and sent up to you. Or sent to, or populated with the official statement or whatever external reports we have to provide. We want to make sure that those systems are working appropriately and that are communicating appropriately. Same thing with our SCADA system, that we want to make sure that there's controls in place to maintain the integrity of our SCADA system. So we don't develop our information systems in-house. It's best to use somebody who's an expert in that field to develop those systems, to make sure that the integrity of those systems are maintained. And then finally, monitoring. Do you have any questions about information and communication? No?
Actually.
Yeah.
Do we do any training with employees about fraud and phishing, the emails that everyone gets or text message that says, president of the board is asking you to go and buy $250 worth of gift card.
That's actually a good question. I don't know if we do that training
We have.
I can answer that. So we have had many kind of discussions and trainings with our staff directly, periodically. We definitely get those phishing emails as part of having, our information on the website, like we do. There's, pros and cons to that. There is a more formal service offered actually through Aqua JPIA that does actually kind of test phishing emails, that, will get sent to staff members, board members, anyone with a district email address. And then if one kind of fails the test, then we're identified and there can be, further education. We haven't enacted that software yet. it's pretty funny because the emails from JPIA usually get caught up in our spam filter because they're talking about phishing. But we just actually had that conversation this week, and we're gonna get that going, because that is a good tool that is at our disposal that we would like to use.
I keep getting these emails from this person named Allison asking me to sign things.
And reminding you
Yeah.
to sign them.
But it's an Allison with two L's.
Yeah.
That's the wrong Allison.
It comes from Nigeria.
I mean, yeah. I'm done.
And then, finally monitoring of controls, I think the director reports that you get at the end of the end of the meeting is a form of monitoring to make sure that the results are where you expect it to be. As well as the audit and any potential findings, coming out of that is another way to monitor controls. And then this exercise will be another way to assess and continue to monitor those controls. So our internal control assessment is now complete on the board's blessing.
Nice work.
Any questions?
So do we get a report? This started from the,
So this started from the grand jury
the grand
report.
jury, so. do
We're
we-
not required to submit anything. What they'll do is they will reach out, when the new grand jury convenes, they will reach out and ask to see if this is completed. We do technically have until June 30th to complete it. Pursuant to the grand jury report, but if they reach out before then here you go.
And the timing of doing it now as opposed to waiting is just so it doesn't, when we're focused on budget, we don't have to stop and do this report, so.
So, yeah, that's a good point. So we talked about the timing of this and, we thought to do this just before the subsequent fiscal year budget is to be started. It's good to set, okay, these are our boundaries, these are our policies, these are intents. To make sure that everybody's reminded of that at the beginning of the budget process. So that way everybody's got that clear mindset. So we'll be continuing doing this, probably the February meeting of every year in the future. As we can.
And James, earlier in your report, you went on the ARC system.
Yeah.
Could you go over that again?
So so it's for control activities. I call it ARC. It's authorization, recording, and custody. So somebody who authorizes an invoice should not be recording a transaction in the system. So I can't imagine Rena signing away, saying signing some invoice and then processing that transaction and then printing the check. And then, well, he's also signatory on the bank account, so he just signed it, but really that check wasn't for vendors, for himself, that he's got a company with that name, so we want to make sure that.
Which means that you would have had to generate an invoice.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So the
Because then you said, you could pay yourself again. And how is the invoice gonna get paid? At some point, the invoice from outside is gonna have to get paid because the vendor is gonna come
Yeah.
back. But yeah, he could generate, yeah.
So like one of the fraud tests we do as auditors is, you look at ABC Corporation,
Mhm.
and then there's A.B.C. Corporation. And then there's A space, B space, C space corporation.
Of course.
So are those three vendors? Are they one vendor? Are they authentic? So we have to validate that information. Sometimes you'll see somebody change addresses on vendor information. So that's one of the things I review in our system to make sure none of that happens. So yeah, that ARC piece is the linchpin of a good.
Of course.
It's segregation of duties,
Yeah,
essentially. It's the linchpin of a good, solid,
Just to check and balance,
internal
yeah.
control system. Yeah.
Good. All right.
And
Thank you.
we do have a control around changing vendor addresses, because the example that you gave is actually a very common way.
It is, yeah.
Um,
So I review, it's detective control, so I review after the checks are printed, but it's within a reasonable period that we're able to do any actions if anything happened. So. Yeah.
And staff knows to call the vendor and have a conversation as well, and not just to take emails as direction. For that, and the same for, you know, payroll as well. Because that's another kind of common thing is, hey, check my, you know, change my deposit information. That's never done without written authorization and a conversation.
Excellent, thank you.
So, James, if the grand jury does not find any inappropriate payments or behavior at all financially, but we may not be following what we're doing. I mean, could we still be, could this still be a problem?
I
Even
don't-
though there's no fraud that could be.
Yeah,
found?
I think they're just checking to make sure that there's a process in place. I don't think that they're actually examining fraud. Now, if anything winds up splashed over page 6 of the newspaper saying that there was fraud, then they're gonna come back and say, well, this is what you said.
Well, yeah, but obvious. So then the guidelines are provided by the grand jury then?
The direction is provided, the guide, by the grand jury, the guidelines are provided by, I utilize COSO, the COSO framework.
Okay,
Because that is the
and the grand jury
standard.
would recognize that as a.
They recognize that in the green book, yeah. So, as the de facto standards to utilize.
Cause I'm thinking, you know, what, we're going through all this over and over again, and you spend time and you spend money on it, and then you go like, okay, maybe we're solving a problem that they are not looking at, they're looking at something else. And people like,
So it's a knee-jerk reaction to some reports of fraud. They cited two pieces of fraud in their report that triggered them to look.
mhm.
One relates to Broadmoor Police Protection District. And then San Mateo County pay-to-play prosecution. Oh, and there's a third one, reporting of personal residences paid for government funds. So they're citing those as examples of alleged fraud and waste. So it's a knee-jerk reaction to make sure that the districts, all the governmental agencies, local government agencies, at least have a process to mitigate this risk.
Yeah.
Not eliminate it. They, you know, internal controls, there's a cost benefit to it, right? You can't 100% eliminate fraud. But you can do certain things to mitigate that risk of fraud, of potential fraud in the future.
I'm pretty familiar with the Broadmoor situation.
Okay.
God forbid we are anywhere close to there. It's pretty sad.
Yeah, so that was their trigger of, to look into this. So.
All right, thank you.
Anything else? No. Let's see, this does not require an action by the board.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Just receive it and file it away until somebody asks for it, or we have to review it again.
Send it to somebody by June.
Right. Well, we'll actually have to.
James will be looking at it every day.
Yeah. I live it, I breathe it.
Thank you, James. Item number 8E. Consider appointment of a director to the boards of the Bay Area Water Supply and Conservation Agency and Bay Area Regional Water System Financing Authority. So we're looking for volunteers to do that.
Give me a scapegoat. Go ahead, Kat. Lead it.
Yeah. So we received the letter that was attached to the staff report, and by we, it was, you know, sent to President Wheeler, letting us know that at the end of June, Director Vella's current term on the Bosco boards will be up. As many of us know, Director Vella has been our representative on the Bosco board actually since Bosco was created in 2003. There's no term limit. And actually, Director Vella currently serves as the vice chair of the Bosco Board of Directors. So we do, or you as a board do need to appoint a director to follow, you know, June 30th to serve as the representative. the letter outlines, the requirements, for that person, but, I suppose we can ask Director Bella if he would like to continue to serve as our representative.
I have to add that I was 15 when I was first. Yeah, I'll be happy to continue on. For another term.
So
If
the board
so-
can, I was gonna say, just say that the board can make the appointment just via, a motion, doesn't need a reso or anything, so.
I'm happy to move for Louis to continue his, or to reappoint Louis to a 4-year term on the Bosco board.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Can we do a voice vote on this?
Yes.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Another 4 years, Louis.
Younger every day.
Yes, right.
You'll be 40 by the time you're done.
Oh, yeah.
We have 8F. Which is received mid-year review of FY 2024-2025 operating and capital budgets. And consider a resolution approving the amended budgets.
Me again. All right. So mid-year through the year, effective as of December 31st, we're 50% of the way through the year. We started going back and evaluating where we're at year to date, in relation to our budget. I'm sure you guys are aware that we adopted new rates that are effective January 1st. So, this means increased revenues. And then we went back and took a look at, other items like the personnel budget and, as well as other expenditure accounts to make sure that everything lined up correctly. Overall, we've come to about an additional $1.6 million adding back to the bottom line, back to reserves, based on this mid-year budget adjustment. The biggest increase does relate to the water rates, and the methodology that we utilized to adjust those water rates is we took we have that monthly average report that's in my district treasurer's report. We took the numbers for February through June and applied the 25% to those numbers. And then that amount becomes our new budget figure. So that resulted in about $1.5 million to account for those new rates, in just the water charges and fixed system charges. In water capacity charges, those are those one-time revenues. Last year, or for the current year, we had originally budgeted approximately 60,000 because we didn't know what we were gonna get, right? It's not great to budget based on one-time revenues or to rely on one-time revenues. So we knew we were gonna get something, but we didn't know what we're gonna get. We did receive a payment of about $807,000 for a project related to Belmont Avenue. So I'm proposing to increase the budget to match that actual. So I didn't put anything extra in there. I just wanted to match that actual. Then there's some other miscellaneous adjustments. We adjusted the investment income downward to, the original budget had accounted for fair market value adjustments. I wanted to back that out. And then also to true up our actual investment receipts. So now that we've got a full schedule of bonds, or of investments that have, set maturities, I wanted to make sure that we tie those two together. And then there's some miscellaneous revenues that we've increased by about $10,000 just because we see additional activity during the year. For the expenditure piece, we talked about this in the finance committee meeting, and Director Bell was very vocal about his opinion about insurance rates, that they're going up. And so our insurance rates did go up higher than what we originally expected. And that's not just with health and dental and vision, but that also includes our property and general liability insurance. So salaries and benefits, primarily because of that, went up about 150,000. We have adjusted buildings and grounds by 55,000 due to tree pruning. Credit card fees were increased by 55,000 because we've got more credit card transactions that are coming through. That we're having to pay those costs. We do have a set fee of $3 per transaction. But those costs just keep going up. So the banks, I guess, need to charge more for their electricity or something to process those transactions. I don't know what the driver is for them. We did adjust the Bosca water management fee by 21,000, and that's that new management fee that we took a whack back in April. We didn't know what the actual cost was gonna be, and we got our first invoice in September, I believe it was, September, October. So now we're able to true it to its actual number. So we're reducing that line item by 21,000. Softwares and licenses reduced by 40,000. Particularly, we were considering going to a different software, like the Census Water Watch line item. We're considering a different software, which we did not. So that went from basically 50,000 down to 15, and then some minor adjustments other places. And then finally, the big item in the operating budget was the utilities. PG&E's rates are just going up and up and up and up. So that was increased by 53,000 because of that. The capital budget, we increased Old County Road. So that increased by 388,000 to reflect actual costs for the completion of that project. And then air relief and vacuum valves were reduced by 80,000 just based on the expected activity for the remainder of the year. Where was it? One thing I wanted to point out, there was one project on our line item budget for a main assessment for about 600,000. We have not done work on that yet, but it is gonna continue staying on our budget because we'll be able to roll it forward to the subsequent year. So I wanted to make sure that was pointed out as well. What questions may you have?
And also, we do want to ask the question that came up earlier related to the timing of our first
Oh, thank you, yeah.
payment for the new debt. I don't think we have any issues or concerns about paying it and starting to pay it this June. We have the cash flow to do so, but we would want to add that in to adjust to this budget since it isn't currently incorporated in the budget.
And the other consideration to that is regardless if it's in the budget, you'll see it on the financial statements when we do the audit because we would have to accrue that amount in anyways. So I don't see any issue with the cash flow piece. And we'll have to recognize it anyways for accounting purposes.
What's the schedule on the current COP payments? Is that
May November?
It's June, December. It's June 1st, December 1st.
So we pay the principal twice a year?
No, we pay interest is June 1st, December 1st, principal is December 1st. So we just paid it 2 months ago. Wow. Yeah.
So we pay all of the interest in one lump sum for the year?
No, we
I
pay
thought it was
interest.
quarterly.
No, we pay interest biannually. So we'll pay half of it in June and then the other half in December.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's why the December one is a much bigger
Yeah.
number because of the principal.
Yeah.
Portion. I guess my thought would be that having the first payment come in June would probably look better because then that would be the principal be charged or not?
No, not principal. But recognizing on a budgetary basis, recognizing the payment in June would match, well, for cash flow, it would match what needs to happen in the budget.
Right.
For accounting purposes. So I think that would be the better option to go. And it's clearer.
Okay. If we have the cash, I don't see any reason not to.
So we would just have to amend the budget to include an additional 250,000 in expenditures.
Right.
Related to debt service.
Okay.
And that would literally go from the dash that's there now.
Yeah.
To 250.
Yes.
Whatever it was.
Yes. Yeah. The middle column would be adjusted upward, right? So. Thanks for that reminder, Kat.
Okay.
On the credit card payment, James, how much is that costing us?
Oh, that's a, give me just a minute and I will grab that.
Okay, so, but it's costing us a lot of money, right?
Yes,
Yes.
And we're charging $3,
$3. Yes,
and the banks are charging us more.
yes.
Why are we
So-
doing that?
I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, James, that total amount is the total credit card fees, and it's not adjusted for the amount we receive from customers that does go towards it, right? That's just the
Right.
straight literal payment to the service, not taking out the $3 per transaction that customers pay. So we,
Oh,
maybe a year or so ago, actually, when Al Labossiere was still involved, we actually dug a little deeper to see what the real costs were, and they were much lower, much lower. I don't have the number off the top of my head, but it is something that, you know, when we get around to it, we will be looking at that policy and see if it makes sense to bring it to the board to change the amount that we are and passing, you know, on to customers. But it's not as bad as it seems.
yeah, it will make sense. I can
Right.
tell you right now. You
And
can bring it 2 months from now, but it will make sense. 2 months from now. No, but my next question was going to be, is there an electronic payment that is available for commercial, not for personal, or our side that does not have a charge attached to it? Because I know for personal there is.
There is none that I'm aware of.
I think Zelle is.
I think they still charge, when I was speaking with Central Contra Costa Sanitary District a couple of months ago. They were getting charged by PayPal, by Zelle, and
For
by,
personal, I'm saying for personal use.
oh, yeah,
For personal use,
Right.
there exists the non-charge.
right.
But for commercial, I
Yeah.
don't know of any that exist.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. I don't think that there are any that exist that don't charge for commercial purposes.
Yeah. So in other words, you know, if somebody is using a credit card or an electronic payment because it's convenient, they need to pay for that convenience. That should not be incurred by us, you know? But that will be my point when we talk about this.
Right. And, you know, we're just upped our rates, so that number is going to be higher if they're getting.
Yeah, because it's a
3%
percentage of every transaction, so.
Percentage of every transaction.
It's a fraction, but it builds up really quick.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, well, my rates went up by 25%, so.
Yeah.
And you voted on that.
I should have, conflict of interest. I don't wanna go
Are
through it.
you kidding me? You know, my wife tells me every time she gets a new rate increase, like I did not sign up for this.
Yeah. Okay. So at some point, we should revisit that. I don't
Yes.
know that we need to worry about it now. Yeah.
It's on the to-do list.
Beyond the scope of this staff report.
Right.
It's on the list.
Okay, so we have a resolution to accept the amended budget as is. Anybody have any?
I would say with the amendment to increase debt service by 250,000
Yes,
for interest.
I'll move
okay,
the resolution as amended.
we have a motion
I'll second.
and a second.
Director Zuka,
Yes.
Vice President Bella,
Yes.
Director Schmidt,
Yes.
Director Covington,
Yeah.
President Wheeler.
Yes. Okay. So. Item 8G, consider approving resolution 2025-09, updating the MPWD compensation plan to add a superintendent job description and updating the salary schedule. Allison?
Yes, so this resolution references 2 items. The first item is going to be the addition of the superintendent job description, which is attached. This position is going to be an exempt position. So an exempt position is just like the manager's position, so it'll be exempt from accruing any overtime. The superintendent position has historically been in Mid-Pen, but has not been fulfilled for quite some time. So we are bringing that position back. And the adjustment to the org chart, as you can see, is the sample that the operations supervisor position will be eliminated and be replaced with the superintendent position. So there will not be both positions. It will be replaced with the superintendent position. From there, that will domino effect to the salary schedule. So the addition of the superintendent salary schedule is going to be under the exempt classification. And it'll just be right underneath a 3% salary of the manager's salary schedule. Also, in addition to the salary schedule, we did take off the CFO position and the, oh gosh, what was the other one, Kat, that we took off?
Assistant General Manager.
Just because those positions aren't being filled, so just for transparency, just having them eliminated off of the salary schedule was just for ease of transparency.
Yeah, and the job descriptions will remain in the compensation plan, so if ever we had a need for any of those positions, we just would have to add them to the salary schedule.
Correct.
Is there a differential pay between the I see the pay for the superintendent, but what's the differential between the supervisor and superintendent?
So the pay is going to be an increase, so we have to encompass the overtime pay that the supervisor was previously accruing. And the salary schedule that the superintendent position is now on is slightly below what the current operations supervisor was bringing in salary plus overtime.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for including the org chart. I asked for that. So on the operations supervisor side, that is gonna be changing to a superintendent. We used to have 2 operations supervisors,
Correct.
right?
Mhm.
Okay. And all of that superintendent will continue to, which he's doing right now, right?
Correct. So historically, we had the 2 operations supervisor positions. When one of the operations supervisors retired, the current operations supervisor just inherited both positions and has been doing both positions.
Inherited both, the work
Yes.
of both.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
so now that he's been proficient at both positions, we're just giving him the title of superintendent.
The job description as written really reflects the job that is currently being done and has been done for a while.
Correct.
The other piece, since the previous operations supervisor retired and it was consolidated into one role, we also have had our operations team filled out with a lot of new and very strong staff members who are, learning and bring on new skills and, certified. So they're going into the on-call rotation once they hit their 1-year mark with the district. And so, the team itself is very different than it was, 2.5, 3 years ago when that previous supervisor retired. And so that, that role actually has changed quite a lot in that time period, to one of with a lot more office work, which is kind of really the key differentiator between exempt and non-exempt employees, and a lot of training, mentorship, leadership type emphasis. So it's a very good problem to have a team that's so functional right now. And
Okay, I have seen this in the finance committee and I have no problem with it as it is formatted here. key point would be that it would give the opportunity of the current operations supervisor the opportunity not to be on call as often type of thing. And we've been developing some staff who can cover the on-call situation. And I think, wasn't it that this would take effect in a couple of
Yes,
months?
he has requested that the transition be delayed until he feels confident enough that the staff has been trained well enough to be on call, where he feels confident that he's not as needed to where he can be taken off the schedule. So the transition is going to be delayed in regards to, we're not sure when it's going to happen, but he'll let us know. So we're thinking probably May-ish, June, maybe. We'll see. He'll let us.
How often did I get called out?
How would they get called out?
How often? Yeah,
Yeah, during a 7-day period, maybe 2 or 3 times they'll get called out, you know?
because obviously, I think we're gonna be comfortable enough that the newer people are going to be able to take the on-call.
Yeah.
Based on the number of time that they actually do go out there. Otherwise, it's very difficult to assess.
Yeah, I mean, the challenge, is most of our people don't live in the community, right? So I was just talking with one of the newer employees, Eric Perez, he's gonna take call in the next couple of weeks. So he was talking about using the bunkhouse that we've created in one of the office trailers out over there, because he's got to sign up for that and so on. And we're just talking about, making sure the alarms, turned off, on the property so it doesn't trigger a police department reaction. But the thing is again, he's one of our new employees, right? And he doesn't live here, but he's gonna be staying here all week long, even though he may get called out maybe once, maybe twice, but that's the role, right? You never know if it's gonna be a water emergency or if it's a customer with an issue, and if it's something like, they have an emergency, need to have their water turned off, then we go out there. But if it's something that's not, we tell them, look, we don't need to come out there, we can come out there tomorrow type thing, but still you have to have somebody available
Correct.
for customers.
And they do get the on-call pay.
Yeah, they get 2 hours for just being available. And then they get double time up to, they get double time after midnight.
Correct.
Right, and then up to midnight, it's time and a half.
Yeah,
If they,
It's actually, it's 2 hours standby during the week and 4
Yeah.
hours standby weekend and holidays. And then time and a half for regular overtime, and then double pay after midnight. And, as Rena mentioned, most of the calls that, the vast majority of them are just turn-ons and turn-offs. They're not, big, time-consuming events, but they're things that we need to be available to do. And then a few times a year, we do get our larger breaks, and, we're always here in case that happens.
Any other questions?
No.
So. Can I have a motion to approve the resolution?
I'll make a motion. To approve resolution 2025-09.
I'll second.
Vice President Bella,
Yes.
Director Schmidt,
Yes.
Director Zuka,
Yes.
Director Covington.
Yes.
President Wheeler.
Yes.
What are we doing here?
We're going to hold on H for the moment. And go through the reports. Or no, J. Which is.
Sure, boss got
the water conditions.
Gotta do the feedback first. Gotta ask Louis what he did.
Oh.
You gotta- Appointment.
I was gonna turn it over to Kat.
Me. All right. My boss items, of course, are in my report as usual. We got earlier this month, we got SFPUC's initial water supply availability estimate for the year, which is positive. They do believe they have enough water in storage. They don't anticipate any shortage this year. the next update will be provided March 1st with the final supply availability memo. So that's positive. Last week, there was the SFPC wholesale customer meeting held in Millbrae. They went through, a number of things related to operations, water quality, everything going on. Probably the most interesting to this group is their rate increase beginning July 1. So earlier this year, they gave what they call their range letter, where they say, we're starting to do an analysis on our rates, and we project our updated rates will be anywhere from $5.72 per CCF to $5.99. Of course, that high end of that range was higher than what we had included in our rate study. Well, last week at that point, which is still not final, but last week, they're projecting that the wholesale rate will be $5.79, which is below what we projected in our rate study. So that's also good news. Any amount below what we have projected in our rate study, we can, the customer saves that. We don't charge them anyways. That's a value to the customer. And there is, if you're curious, in my staff report, there's the charts from that presentation on rates. They did note that currently there's about $10.5 million in the balancing account that's positive to the BOSCA agencies. And so because of that balance in the account, they're currently anticipating that SFPUC's rates will remain relatively steady for the next couple of years. Of course, we've been surprised before, but that looks like a 2.1% rate increase this year, followed by a 1%, and then a 1%, and then a 5.2% over the next several years. So we'll see what that winds up being, but currently that's pretty positive. So that's what I have BOSCA and SFPUC related at this point.
Anything else?
No, then we had the report from SFPUC, which I know Renee's gonna be talking about too.
Yeah, water, like regional water system, so.
Yeah. And we have a bunch of new directors on BOSCA. Some people that, either didn't make the election or they were changed. And so we're. And also, the new GM is not, has not caught up with the system the way we have been doing it all these years. Like, for example, we used to get a condensed report of the meeting to present verbally, and he hasn't done it yet, so I don't think he has caught up yet, but I put a note to myself to give him a call tomorrow. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Make sure you tell them you're on the GM performance evaluation.
which I am.
You are, I know you
I
are.
am.
There's 26 of you, you have to figure out who to listen to.
Yeah. I was doing that hired him too. Well, maybe I should change my mind. Wait a minute.
Okay. So going on to item J. EJ. Renaud.
Yeah, so Allison, bring up that the US map. So what we saw in January is a very dry January here in the region, western United States or and so on. And so what this map is reflecting, when I was looking at last month's map, which was for the month of December, maybe the first couple of days in January, what was noticeable there is that bright red, which is an extreme drought condition, and it doubled in size for California and Arizona and Nevada. That area there's doubled in size. So just telling us that, again, that lack of rain that we had in January just caused the drought to exacerbate and increase in size and area. The rest of the US looked like it didn't change much at all. And then if you go to the California map, the next slide, I just kind of pointed out that top row in the chart on the right side that looking at the drought ranges, 6 different drought ranges, a third of the state has not shown any signs of drought. That's the clear area or white area. Almost 2/3 or more than 2/3 of the state is showing, some abnormally dry conditions, 54% showing moderate drought. And then the severe and extreme drought numbers just kind of keep creeping up. And I took a look at what it looked like again at the beginning of calendar year 2025. And the orange, the severe drought, and the red extreme droughts were like 5% and 1%, and they've gone up quite a bit. So again, this 1 month of having a lack of rain throughout much of the state just increased the drought conditions based on the monitoring characteristics. And then if you look at the bottom of that table, a year ago, 90% of the state or 91% of the state were showing no signs of drought. And then the dry and extreme stuff was just non-existent. It just, the state was still, seeing the effects of the heavy rains we had in 2023. The next slide is the California reservoir situation. And I always just kind of talk about the 4 reservoirs, the 2 at the top, the Shasta Oroville. And what you're seeing there is from a historical perspective, that green horizontal line there, well, they're above that. So that's in a good position, but maybe not leaving as much room for snow melt, but there probably isn't a lot of snow either. We just haven't had as much snow this year.
Well, but there is.
There's no.
Last week, there's still a lot of snow.
Yeah. So, so there'll be some snow melt, but probably not as much as we had in 2023 or 2024. On the right-hand side, the middle chart, of the Dom Pedro Reservoir, and that's the reservoir where San Francisco has what they call their water bank. And so there's about almost 600,000 acre feet of water in there that belongs to San Francisco or to the regional water system. And so that green line there and the blue bar are just kind of matched up, basically saying that the amount of water stored there is kind of at its historical levels. That's not a bad thing. And right now, up until I think in another couple of weeks, the Hetch Hetchy system or the tunnel is going to open up and start releasing water from Hetch Hetchy because they've been doing maintenance for almost, they're supposed to be 100 days. So they've been doing it since November or something like that. So we've been getting water from the East Bay, the Calaveras, and the other reservoir that I can't think of off the top of my head. And then also Crystal Springs coming through the Harry Tracy water treatment plant. So anyways, the Dom Pedro is looking pretty good. And then the other one I'll typically point to is the San Luis Reservoir on the other side of the middle of the California map there. And again, it's kind of right at its historical level, just sitting there waiting for water to start coming down from Northern California into that reservoir and then off towards Southern California. So we're looking pretty good reservoir storage wise. The next chart is just the map, and it's a map from NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. And what's basically showing the same thing it showed a month ago is just equal chances of either abnormally, above normal or below normal temperatures for this part of the nation. Nothing really changed at all. It's the same thing last month. So not much to see there. And then the next one is the precipitation. And again, when I looked at last month's map, it showed the same thing for our part of California. We had equal chances of being above or below normal precipitation. Actually, you'd probably say it's below normal because we didn't get much rain in January. Turning to just the different cities in the state and how they are doing with regards to rainfall, you can see this table here. And what's interesting to note is that in the first part of the table, the percent normal downtown San Francisco, just kind of looking at that, it shows that, it had up until February 2nd, about 11.5 inches of rain. Normally they get 13.2 inches of rain, or so they're sitting at 80%, 87% of normal. Last month, okay, at the beginning of the calendar year, they were at 114%. So again, not too much rain fell during the month of January, and it just changed the situation compared to normal. And then you look down towards the bottom, the Southern California, they also didn't have much rain. But they did get that one particular storm that came after the wildfire out there, and so it just kind of changed the percentages actually increased, the percentages comparing season to normal rainfall, they actually went up a little bit. But again, my point is just, it's been a dry January. And now it's reflecting, if you go to the next one, the Hetch Hetchy precipitation. The black line there is the 30-year median, 30-year period from 1991 to 2020. And the red line is the precipitation that's being monitored up there in the Hetch Hetchy system. And so you can see in January, we were tracking along with the 30-year line, but again, in January, it was pretty flat. The red line was pretty flat. We had a little bit here at the end of January and into February, but we've fallen below that 30-year compared to what we saw last year, kind of tracking where we are now last year, but still below the 30-year. The next slide is just the bar chart kind of showing the same thing, just a dry January. So far, the rainfall for the year is, let's see, I made a note here that the January rain was 23% of the 30-year median. So the red bar is a 30-year median, almost 6 inches of rain. The blue bar for January, the 1.34 inches, is only 23% of the rain we typically would see in January. Just a really dry. February hasn't changed much either. You see that February is only 1.2 inches. And again, that was early in February, but we haven't seen much rain through February either. But it's interesting that, Kat was saying, I wasn't able to go to do the SFPUC meeting, because the water storage, and you'll see that here in a little bit, is looking pretty good. SFPUC is not looking at any, asking for, hopefully, any cutbacks in water use by customers. The Bay Area rain index is very similar to what you see in the Sierra Nevada. It's just not very good. We had a pretty dry January, and February's not looking much better. We had a nice November, December, but these last couple months have been pretty quiet rain-wise. And let's just take a look at the snow chart. So again, the snow chart up in the Hetch Hetchy area, the black 30-year line and the red current year line, you can see that up until January, we're just kind of tracking along with the 30-year median. But again, the lack of snow and lack of rain in January kind of made itself, proved itself out here in the red line now, and just falling way below the 30-year. But we're kind of tracking where we were last year. You can see that purple dotted line is 2024. So we had a lot of snowfall in 2024 last year in February, going through the month, and actually by the end of February we caught up with the 30-year average. I don't think that's going to happen this year. The next slide is just the reservoir conditions, and again, the regional water system storage wise, both up in the Tuolumne Hetch Hetchy system and down here locally, is looking pretty good. Overall 85% of storage capacity. That's looking pretty good. And that's with Hetch Hetchy being off, because again, they're doing the maintenance work in the tunnels that come out of Hetch Hetchy. And when you compare this month's overall storage capacity of the 1.25 million acre feet with last month, which was about 1.26, there's only a difference of about 5,000 acre feet. So again, we're looking pretty good, water storage in the system. And then the next slide, just kind of getting to the end of it, the total deliveries in the regional water system. You see the green triangle there, 167 million gallons a day was what was posted there for the end of January. That compares with the 5-year average was probably about 150 million gallons a day. So there's been a market increase, of water use, and starting off in 2025. But what's interesting is that orange line above the green triangle, that's 2015. Those of us have been around here for a while remember 2015 being a really dry year, right? And we started out using quite a bit of water. And then lo and behold, in April, we were told we need to cut back because it's a drought situation. So you see the orange line for 2015 showed some pretty good usage numbers early on, and then dropped quite a bit started out in spring because of the drought. We'll see what happens this year, but right now we're on track to have a pretty good water use year. We'll see. I suspect as long as SFPUC doesn't call for any cutbacks or anything like that, our water use in the regional system, the deliveries are going to probably be up near, the 5-year average, if not even a little bit higher. And then we get into locally, our situation here in the district. And so here's the similar chart as the one you saw previously for the regional water system, but this is for us, and we're kind of in the same boat, you know, our water take from the SPUC system for start of 2025 is kind of in the middle, just kind of similar to the regional. You know, that the 2015 use was up higher than it was for January 2025. But January 2025 is higher than it was in January 2024. So we kind of follow along what goes along in the regional system. We'll see how it plays out. I mean, our customers do a good job of using water wisely, I feel. And then the second to last is just this cumulative line chart, just the first month's data in there. But to note that the January volume use of water exceeded the 5-year average by 1,300 CCF. So that's just saying that we're off to a rousing start. You know, we're using a little bit more water than we've used compared to the 5-year average. And then the last slide is I just kind of reorganized this. It's just the significant fire potential. And right now I was just looking at there's little to no risk. It's winter time, you know, it's kind of wet. The hills are turning green. There's moisture in the ground, so there's very little you know, concern with regard to fire. But you know, a month ago, I remember the one map I showed you was kind of showing that there was a very high potential for fire. And sure enough, you know, with that time frame at the Los Angeles area, the Pacific Palisades, the Malibu area had those significant fires that caused a lot of damage. So this map is pretty accurate. It's got some good information in it. So that's a story. We're looking good. We had a dry January, but just overall storage is looking good throughout California and the regional system. And as Kat said, San Francisco right now is not saying that there's going to be any need for cutback because we're sitting pretty good.
Okay. Management and reports. Treasurer, financial reports.
All right, I won't go over the budget numbers since we just changed the budget. And I haven't had a chance to retabulate the numbers yet. But as far as actual results, as of January 31st, 2025, we're at 59% of the year. And our surplus from operations is about $2.2 million or $2.3 million, which is an increase of about 300,000 as compared to the same time last year. The primary change, of course, comes from the commodity charge that I had mentioned. Last year, we received nothing. This year, we received 800,000. So that's the primary change, and then offset by few expenditures. So like purchased water is running about 365,000 lower than last year. Salaries and wages is about 120 or 180,000 more than it was at this time last year. In the professional services, of course, is running up more than last year at this point too. Debt service payments, we made the principal and interest payment back in December, so that's 754,000. I had mentioned that there's one scheduled payment at 319 on June 1st, but now let's add another 250 to that. Just to scroll down to, you know, just kind of the water with the water purchase or excuse me, water revenue. We're already trending higher than what our projected budget was at this point. So we were at 64%, 65% of budget as of January 1st or January 31st, and we're just projecting to be at 59%, right? So we're projecting going about 5% higher than what we had budgeted.
Is that because of commodity consumption or the higher rates?
It's higher consumption. Yeah, so we won't see the higher rates until February.
Okay.
So my next board report will start reflecting that. Just scrolling down to, I just kind of wanted to highlight the reserves piece, which is the last report on my packet. So our capital reserve, we're at 90%. Last month we were at 98%, but we have made some expenditures related to capital items, such as we paid out for the trucks, and then there's some construction payments that we've made under PAYGO. So that has dropped a little bit, but we fully expect that to get built back up here in the next month. So, and then after the capital reserve is filled, course, we'll aim for the rate stabilization reserve. All the other reserves, the 115 trusts, the working capital trust reserve, those are all 100% complete. The reserve for debt service did drop a little bit because we did make that payment. We transfer 100,000 per month back into that account in order to make that our debt service payment for the next one is scheduled for June 1st. So beyond that, I just wanted to point that out for this month. So.
Anyone have questions? If there are no questions, we can go on to district engineer. Right?
Great. Just gonna report on a few projects. One of them being Harbor Boulevard water main project. So we installed the air valve that was missed. This project is essentially, it is completed. With the issue regarding the conduit that is owned by the county that the contractor had struck at the intersection of Industrial and Harbor Boulevard. We never heard anything from the county, so at this point, we're gonna consider moving forward with closing out the project at this point. The Decoven, Lincoln, Newlands, and Oakville water main improvements. We're gonna be advertising this project next week. And then opening bids on April 8th, and then coming to the board for a recommendation for award at the April 24th board meeting. And then generally it's a month or two to get, or month and a half or so to get contracts lined up, submittals reviewed, and so hopefully we're anticipating construction starting early June. The West Belmont Exborn coating project, this was a project that we've been working on. We're at 90% design stage on that. However, we have also added now the Hallmark tank structural retrofit, just specifically the north tank. So we're gonna be retrofitting that and as well as coating. And so we're gonna add to that project to the Exborn and West Belmont project. So we're gonna be on schedule with this one. We're gonna be bidding this project in the fall. And so we can take the tanks out of service in the winter time, which is beneficial for the district. And then lastly, we're assisting the city on a couple projects. One is their 2025 sewer project where they're gonna be replacing some sewer mains. The city has we've been under the gun with the city because we found out about these projects really late in their design. And so we just sent out their 100% review for the 2025 sewer project. So what that entails is when the city has, developers have projects that we want to be able to review those and provide comments to them so that they can accommodate our facilities as well. And then the other project was the Twin Pines Park Detention Basin, where they're gonna be, Twin Parks is behind City Hall, or it's basically the city parking lot, City Hall parking lot. Our main currently runs through that parking lot, and because of the construction of this big detention basin, we're looking at relocating our main out to 6th Street, which is an already programmed capital project. And so at this point, we're still coordinating with the city and reviewing options to abandon that water main to relocate it out to the street. So. That's about it. Any questions?
Did they ever resolve whether or not the existing main was in the right of way or not?
We're still researching that, because my understanding is if perhaps the easement documents may state if it needs to be relocated, who's responsible for bearing that cost.
That's right.
So We've done our research as has the city, and what we found is a record of an intent for the developer to record an easement. But nobody has found evidence that that easement was ever actually recorded. So the next step is a conversation with the city, which I have been trying to push for, so.
At what stage does it become restrictive?
I do not know the answer to that off the top of my head.
Yeah, it's something Julie and actually Laura Ratcliffe have been looking into for us, and so we have a position, and so it's, you know.
Prescriptive against the city.
Yeah, it would be our prescriptive easement. Because you've got to make, after a certain number of years, you sort of have a right to be there. 'Cause
You
sort
usually
of want-
can't get that against the government.
But it's not the right of way. It's in property.
Well, my understanding is
Yeah.
normally you can't get prescriptive rights against a government entity.
But if you are private, I mean, we're a public agency too, so it becomes ours.
But we're trying to take a property right from the city, saying we've been there long enough, it's ours now. And, but I don't know, I'm remembering this from law school, right? Been a while, so.
But you said Julian and Laura are looking into it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so we're just trying to get the right folks at the city to engage at this point. So there's been some challenges related to that. But.
Yeah, they've had a turnover in the upper parts of public works. So I do have a question. The words missing air valve don't often appear in sentences. Could you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, in construction, and correct me if I'm wrong, Brenna, we had to make an adjustment to our alignment and a high point was created. And at the time, an air view was not installed.
Oh, okay. So it was a construction adjustment. It wasn't, that was missing for plan.
No.
It was, okay, that makes sense.
And any other questions? Okay. Administrative services. This one.
That's me. All right, the time has come to start the recruitment for the operations manager. Because Rena has decided to abandon us for retirement. So I started the engagement process with John Davidson in regards to creating a recruitment brochure. So that is a process that we are working through. Kat and I are engaging in that as well on our end. We've also started the process with eSource, which is the early stages with our introductory meeting and our 2-hour kickoff meeting, which has just been a very, very good learning experience for me, just getting to know what we do from billing to meter reads to that whole process for me. So it's a thorough and detailed assessment with eSource that we gain a better understanding of the process and workflows that we use and how we interact with each other and what best position possible they're going to help us to see what our workflows do and help us to prevent any errors. So this will be a long process and I'll keep you all apprised on it. But some good news is the ongoing forever records management update of Folger, all 60 bins that I've inherited of records. We're now down from 60 to 53 bins, thanks to Liz and I. And I have located a bin that we had thought was lost of original resolutions and ordinances, wet signatures that has been located and is, as soon as I find somebody who can pick it up for me and bring it here, it'll make its way over here. But we have found it.
Do we have to keep all of that paper or can it be digitized?
Yes, well, so technically we can digitize a lot of our things, but in regards to having a proper records management policy, if we digitize, there has to be a certain process for everything going forward being digitized and how we process going forward and how we have to backtrack that. To get us to that place, that's gonna take us a while, just because if you were to see where we came from the flood, and just in regards to what was lost, and then now what I've inherited, which is just kind of an abundance of banker boxes of just stuff just thrown in, just sorting through that, and then with, on top of going to be the moves and the builds of, you know, the buildings, it's gonna take a while before we can even engage in the process of, you know, getting some sort of a company that would be able to come in and backtrack all of our, you know, past, you know, ordinances and resolutions and whatever documents we have, personnel files and things like that, get those uploaded for us and then start us on the process of being able to keep that record up on our end. So I mean, it's definitely something that we can do, but we're not near there yet.
Yeah. And we might mention that, well, there's a whole slew of very detailed rules and laws as a public agency of how long we have to keep what types of records and all and whatnot. It gets very complicated very quickly, but I want to say maybe 6 months ago, something like that, we adopted a very detailed comprehensive records management policy that outlines all of those requirements and all the different types of records we have and what the, you know, specific retention times for all of those files are, and that the process for destroying ones that have you know, passed the retention time. So that's something that's fresh on everyone's mind. We didn't have as thorough a detailed policy before, so we're still in the process of going through and implementing it. And of course, that's implementing it for these 60 boxes of files remaining that were kind of very haphazardly thrown together as we were rescuing them from the flood. So.
Oh, one item was my ethics training. I sent you a cert and it still shows up. It's
Oh.
not done.
I will fix that. Thank you.
I'm
You
having
need to be retrained. Didn't stick.
Related to that, has everyone done their Form 700? They're due April 1st.
Well, we have an entire month, right?
Just a reminder.
April 1st, Kurt, don't forget.
You know, and I have to do 2 of them as well, so.
Is that done online?
Yeah, so today's actually your first day as a director, as a board director, so then you'll get put into the system on Monday. So then you will get your login for NetFile.
Okay.
We actually get to create a log.
Yes.
Okay, operations.
Yeah, so under projects, something interesting happened to staff. While we were replacing some trees up at Exmoor, remember we took out a bunch of eucalyptus trees out there and we need to replace them. So we're actually looking at another place to plant some of the new trees. We thought, hey, there's some asphalt area up near between the pump station and the western export tanks. Let's take out some of that asphalt and let's plant some trees there because it's a little bit higher instead of being on the downslopes. It'll give an appearance of maybe looking taller because some of our neighbors that were complaining about now these trees are gone, they can see the tanks. So as staff was digging for a 36-inch box trees and a couple 15-gallon trees, they ran into these pieces of metal that were kind of buried underneath the asphalt there. Not thinking what they were, they went ahead and cut them out. Turns out that there is a mechanically stabilized earthen wall there, right? Kind of like a retaining wall, but it's a little different. And they use these straps. They're connected to these blocks and they go back out there. And when you put the earth back on these straps, and each strap was at each block. So I think there's like 2 or 3 blocks of depth there. So each one of these blocks at depth had the strap that was going out horizontally away from the wall. Well, you compact it and there's enough friction there so that strap keeps the wall from wanting to move. when you cut the strap, now you've compromised the wall. So we've had to engage a structural engineer to help us figure out what we need to do, you know, so that wall just doesn't fall down. So a lesson learned that, you know, when you see something, just don't haphazardly go in there and start cutting things out there. Let's find out what's going on first before, you know, we lead ourselves with some other potential issues. Under maintenance, I always like to point out the underground service alerts. That's where we get called out to go mark our water lines out in the streets where you see the blue lines out, that's us. The green line's typically sewer. I think red line is electricity, and I think yellow's gas, yeah. So anyways, it kind of gives you an idea of what kind of building activities taking place in the community. So for the month of January, we had 371 location requests. I mean, which is quite a bit. So I looked, when was the last time we had at least 350, you know, location requests? It was November 2021 and April 2021 when we had 369 and 384. In between that time period, we just haven't had that kind of request. And you look at the bar chart on the next page, and you can see, you know, the last few months, it's been over 300, but, you know, in between that, it's just, yeah, you know, so our average has been 277 per month over the last 12 months, the running average. So we had almost 100 more requests just last month compared to the running average for the last 12 months. So I thought that was interesting. There's just a lot of activity in the community here. We had 3 water main breaks, all 6-inch cast iron pipes in different parts of the community. The pipes are all built in the 1950s. Parts of our system we haven't got to yet, but we'll eventually get there. And then the last thing I want to point out, just kind of proud, Kat mentioned, and maybe Allison too, that we've got some pretty good people that we've hired over the past year or so. And several of these people, new people, Alberto Maldonado, he's been with us about 13 months and he just passed the state's test for a backflow specialist. A specialist is the next level up from a tester. A tester is somebody who can actually go out there and test a backflow device to make sure that it's operating properly. A specialist is the person who can go into a building and define whether or not there's a cross connection potential in the building, whether it's a house or a multi-story hospital building. So that's good because, you know, we have to have a backflow control plan submitted to the state, and we have to have at least a specialist either on staff or under contract and be able to respond to a backflow incident within an hour when it happens. So we've got at least one, and we've got several other people who have taken the backflow tester exam and have passed it and are looking for the next specialist class so they can take that class and then take the state exam to see if they can become a specialist as well.
Are we offering certificate for that?
We're working on that now, Kat and Allison and I.
What was the question?
Are we
We-
offering certification pay for people that get specialist and tested?
Yeah.
Yeah, we already have cert pay established for those. We're evaluating, given the new requirements from the state, whether that level of cert pay is appropriate or should be adjusted.
Yeah. And then the next person, Eric Perez, he's been with us a little more than a year. He just recently passed his D3 exam. So, I mean, congratulations to him. You know, it's as you go up under the certification ladder, so to speak, the exams get a little bit harder. And I was talking with one of the other guys who's kind of stuck on his D2, and he was saying for him it's the math, and it's typically for a lot of the people it's the math, and they get over. Hey, Eric passed the D3 exam, so congratulations. And then Trevor Morris, he's our newest employee. He's been with us a little over 7 months. And so he's taken the test to become a backflow tester. He passed both a hands-on and a written test. So some brand new employees, but all eager to get their hands more and more into the water operations. And so like Kat's mentioned and Allison, we've got some good employees. It's been a while. I think, you know, I remember, I think it was about 2019 or so, we started to lose people either through retirement, and we've unfortunately had a few of our people pass on us, and we just started to lose our certified operators. And then we had a challenge finding people just because everybody's looking for certified operators, but the board here, you know, increased pay and benefits, and we changed our work schedules, and it just turned the tables for us. And from that, you know, we've attracted lots of good employees. So that's a good thing. That's just going on in operations, having fun out there.
Okay. So we're going to do the communications next, or we're going to do the page?
You got the general
General manager.
Oh, we have a general manager, that's right.
I don't have to talk. It's fine. So I think it was mentioned briefly, but we actually were invited by the city of Belmont to participate in a National Incident Management System training specifically for elected officials and department heads. So Alice and Rena and I attended, as well as President Wheeler and Vice President Vela went to the training. The training itself was really good. I mean, if you've had DEMS training before, it was pretty consistent, but it's always nice to have a good refresher. But even more than that, we had some really good conversations with the PD about emergency management and preparation. We are currently working on providing them actually all of the locations of all of our critical facilities to go into their emergency management system. That's a system that any first responder who comes to the area during some kind of big event has access to this web-based system. So they don't need to be from the area. They don't need to know us at all. They just look on this map and they see, oh, those are our water tanks. That's our pump station. It's part of the drinking water system. It's owned by MPWD. They know the critical information. They know that it's critical. So we've wanted to get that information to them for a while, and we just didn't really have a good mechanism. So now we do. And then also, I don't know if it was related to that conversation or perhaps a conversation I had earlier this week with Senator Becker's office, but we got a call on Tuesday also from the San Mateo County Consolidated Fire Department, their emergency manager, to, as we've been asking for a while, but to really engage on better coordinating our planning together. So Ren and I are meeting with him next week and we have some good ideas that we want to suggest and get going. So I'm excited about that. For sure. Next few items, those are the SFPUC items I mentioned before. Then we have, so there's a bill, SB 394 introduced for enhanced penalties for water theft from fire hydrants. Aqua requested member agencies review and sign on to a coalition letter for this, supporting it, and we did sign it. So what this bill will allow is for penalties related to theft of water from hydrants. We actually had an incident maybe a year and a half ago where there was a kind of a construction contractor's small tank truck that was taking water from a fire hydrant, and actually resident videoed them and questioned them and said, hey, are you supposed to be doing that, and all this, and then sent the video to the PD, etc. The challenge with that kind of incident is that the actual amount of water, when you add up the value of it that was stolen, even though it clearly was stolen, video evidence of it, because water costs what it costs, it's actually fairly inexpensive, and so there's not much that the police could even do. So and I don't think we have a very large problem with that. Certainly it happens a little bit in our system, but there's some areas where it's of the state where it's much more extensive. So this is a bill that I think is good, and we're happy to support. I mentioned last week that I went to the CSMFO conference. A lot of really good talks, really interesting, very interesting and challenging time in finance, as everyone's just trying to make sense of what's happening in DC. Given how helpful this conference was and all the uncertainties happening at the federal level, there's actually kind of a similar conference of the California Municipal Treasurers Association. That's in April in Monterey. And so usually I wouldn't go to two, similar kind of finance conferences, but given what's going on, I'm gonna plan to attend that one in April as well. If you recall, we fairly recently switched from a Wells Fargo credit card for the district to Umpqua. So we got our rebate for 2024 of just shy of $2,000 rebate, which is nice because we didn't get any rebates at all with Wells Fargo. So we got that. mentioned, I met with Senator Becker's office, actually the staffers this time earlier this week, just to kind of, renew and remind them that we're here, and then we have the projects with funding needs now that it's a new session. And so we submitted a formal request, so that's out to them, so that they'll have it on their plates when the, if there's an opportunity that comes up. It was a good conversation, and they actually brought up that the senator just introduced a bill related to wildfire planning. So I certainly, offer to be a resource on that if there's anything we can provide, be a sounding board of any type on that. So we did that. The Treasury investment, we early this month, we had a round of treasuries that matured, and so we reinvested that 1.8 million into a 9-month treasury bond that'll mature at the end of October. And the rate we got on that was 4.25%. And so that tranche will result in interest earnings of about $57,000. So you can see the little schedule, kind of cash flow schedule of the ladder, treasury ladder is updated and presented in the report there. Allison mentioned working with eSource. We've had a couple of meetings on that, and here's just the timeline for that study. And both Pakpor and Hanson Bridget raised the rates as they generally do every year. Rates are still quite consistent with, other similar services. And then, I guess I'll if there's any questions on anything else in here, let me know. Folger, the city planning department's review process has been slow. There's a couple of reasons for that. But given that it's been so slow, we're actually going to go ahead and start in parallel the building permit process. We've gotten comments from them. There's been timing issues with getting the planning commission meeting scheduled, as well as, unfortunately, I guess they had prepared comments on our application in September, and we did not receive them until pretty recently. I can't remember if it was the end of January or early February. So we're addressing their comments. There was nothing too significant, pretty typical things. We had to do a survey of the sewer lateral. That was probably the most, effort kind of thing to address. But it's, the city is having some issues overall, so it's a little bit of a challenge, but we are moving ahead. There's nothing that makes us think that nothing will, something wouldn't get approval. It's just their process has been slow. So, and the cost estimates now have been sent to the cost estimator. We're expecting to receive updated estimates mid-March. So we'll see what those look like and share those with the board with more thorough update. Hopefully at the March meeting, and we'll see the timing when we actually receive them. So any questions on any other items?
Kat?
Yes.
Let that be a lesson that we need to drive those plans. We need to be the one to drive them. For them to give us comments 5 months late is just totally ridiculous. This is silly. And so we just don't wait for them. We need to be the ones to drive it. Otherwise, it's not gonna happen. Because with this rate, I mean, the 5 years are gonna come and gone, and we're still being, sitting on that money. It's just ridiculous. And personally, I don't care if they're having problems. That's not our problem, it's theirs.
Yeah.
Questions? Okay. we want to go through the communications next, or director reports, or director? Okay. Director. Who wants to start? Louis, do you have a director's report?
Sure. Of course I do. No, I did go to the, that NIMS, training class that, Kat was talking about. That was, pretty interesting. I haven't been to emergency, training class for quite some time. It brought me back to many years of working with NIMS and SIMS and all that stuff, you know, so. I think it will be a good idea, though, after that, to have, like a tabletop exercise. Because, that was good what they did, but you need to actually do it, you know? And one comment that I made, I don't know if you guys noticed, but in the EOC for Belmont, you have the signs on the ceiling. And the signs are printed on one side only. And so I told him that's ridiculous, that whoever's on that side doesn't even know if that's planning or logistics, because it's blank, you know, what, so, oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. So, that was good. And then went to the HIA meeting, and I forgot what the topic was on the HIA.
Oh, that was the drainage. That was the
Yes,
guy
it was. Yeah.
from the one shoreline,
Correct, one shoreline.
talking about Belmont Creek.
Yeah.
And
Because we had the one with the mitigation pond, you know.
right,
And this one, and I forgot which one was which, because they're both on drainage and, so anyway, cool, yeah,
okay.
that's it. Those are the two sessions that I went to.
Not anything?
Yeah, a couple things. One is, this is affecting Palo Alto, so I'll bring it up here. The state published new fire risk maps. And a lot of our zones that were considered low fire risk are going to medium, and the ones that were medium are going to high. And I don't know to what extent that's driven by the fires down in Los Angeles. But we did note that LADWP, its water system is being sued for the fires. This is before they even get into all of the response or anything else, but just the sufficiency of the water system. And LADWP had attorneys on within 5 days for $10 million at $1,900 an hour. So I'm going down to, there's an AWWA, American Water Works Association, Water in the West, in April. And there's a whole afternoon dedicated to just the fires, what's going on, all that kind of stuff. But I do expect that we're gonna have to be doing something on this, because there's gonna be a lot of liability coming in for LADWP. You know, water systems were never designed to fight wildfires, but it doesn't prevent them from getting sued after the fact. People were quick to comment that it took them 5 days to get lawyers on board, but it took them a year and a half to fix the cover on the, and they hadn't fixed the cover on the reservoir yet. Anyway, it is what it is. So we're thinking about, you know, do we have enough storage or do we have too much storage? Both of those are in the same conversation, because from a water quality perspective, we have too much storage, but from a fire perspective, do we have sufficient? Given what LADWP is going through, what is it gonna be in the future? So between that, the fire risk maps, which affect us because we have power up there as well. That's kind of the stuff that's going on. And then we just actually had our sanitary survey, and DHS is like, they want us documenting testing on emergency response annually. That's gonna come in their recommendation letter to us, they said. So I think that's a result of the fires as well. And I think this is gonna be a massively evolving landscape for the next 2 years. So. That's it.
Okay. Let's see. I went to HIA, and the one shoreline projects that they're talking about are not going to fix much of the flooding problems at our site on Dairy Lane. They are talking about strictly a 10-year level of protection for the drainage system. And they aren't really talking about, climate change and increased tidal elevation coming back up the creek. Belmont Creek doesn't have a flood barrier of any sort type of thing. So we're going to be where we are now for at least 30 or 40 years.
One shoreline does not really actually fix anything
No,
either.
they are
It's
trying
all-
to facilitate projects.
Correct, but they don't fix nothing.
But unfortunately, there are no projects that are proposed to really improve the levees other than Foster City.
Yeah, the scary part was that some of the private owners are being asked to actually do something about it,
Yes,
on their property. That was scary, just like, seriously?
and yes, they were trying to get that, but at the same time, they're going, well, we can't really require you to do this, and it's more, they're just going to try and come up with a land plan that says there'll be a setback that's available for
Correct, yeah.
improvements
Yeah, but
or,
they are the ones that will suffer right away.
Yes.
The moment you have a flood, they are the one that floods every year.
yes. So, yes, it was not encouraging in that respect. And I would dig in men's training, what else? Then we had the finance committee. So one thing that I did get was a email from Aqua JPIA, which says they are tracking a new bill in the legislature, AB 428, which is going to allow risk pooling by private water companies with public agencies. Which JPIA is watching very carefully. Apparently, this was proposed a couple of years ago. And the concern is that private water companies don't really have the same liability issues and the same requirements and the same standards that the JPIA members might be leading.
So they were
So,
talking about like Cal Water?
yeah, like Cal Water. If Cal Water got included in the
The
Aqua
pool.
pool,
Yeah,
what would be the effect on our rates? Type of thing, if they aren't worrying about resilience and other things that cost money. Yeah. So. So, Brian, last director's report.
Last director's report. Couple things, to Matt's comments about fire, my wife and I own a townhouse in Santa Rosa. And it went from no fire hazard to medium. So, yeah, that's happening.
I think everybody thinks it went up a notch.
Yeah, well, ours went up 2 notches.
Oh, it's a low. I didn't know that was even a low.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, and it's right outside the 100-year flood zone too, so we'll see. Maybe we'll get a double whammy.
Wow.
At some point. And then, but the 2 things I mainly wanted to mention was, first of all, this afternoon, I completed my 360 review for my current job. So that was a very good process. 14 people submitted reviews for me. And I can say that I both got a good review and pages of suggestions as how I could do a better job. Which is great. That's what I need to take. This is great that I have this
that's
opportunity.
cool. Was it the first time that you ever got a 360?
First time I ever got a
Really?
360.
Oh, yeah, I got a few of those.
So I just want to throw it out there for Mid-Pen. It'd be a good thing for our staff, for GM and everyone. So it's, I think, just wanted to make that suggestion.
He's gonna leave and just throw it out there. Just throw the steak out there. I'm out of here.
That's right.
That's cool.
And then, yes, I am resigning tonight. I guess I should do it right after communications, there's no time for me to talk then. I will sign this and then I will be resigned. I guess I should walk out before you do the appointment. Not much time I can't say everything. It's been wonderful to be here. Wonderful to be with all of you. And I'm hoping to come back in March to attend Chuck's swearing in.
Well,
You know,
I will be in Australia, so I noticed
Oh.
on here, March 27th. Yeah, my trip, I leave on the 21st and I'm back on April 4th. So I don't know if it's possible to do the swearing in today, or if we have to wait till March. Or
So-
we just,
Have to happen at the formal meeting.
It doesn't have to happen at the formal meeting, because I've experienced board members being sworn in outside of a meeting. Is that it?
Yeah, you don't have to do it at the board meeting.
Yeah, when you and I were elected, we had the swearing in at our onboarding meeting with Tammy. And then, yeah, we had 2 weeks later, we attended our first board meeting.
well, I'm meeting Allison tomorrow to do onboarding.
There you go.
So I'm happy to
I'll
be.
swear you in, Mom.
Have to
Swear me in there.
You're gonna have to raise your-
That's the intent. We'll have a full board that way.
Yes.
Well, if you do something official in April or something like that. Happy to come in. So,
April will be his first official meeting, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I can do that, but, yeah.
You can
This
come
trip
in
was
March.
planned over a
you
year
know, you can come in
ago.
April,
I can keep coming,
you
right?
can keep on.
Maybe.
You're not gonna get your $100 from March though.
Over twice. Hey, so- It's not for the money.
All right, so anyway, the meat of my very long letter here is, I am not able to give justice adequately here to the honor it has been to serve our community on the board of MPWD. So I'll just say that I've been very happy to be among you all. I hope that I contributed my part, and I have no doubt you will continue to serve the community extremely well. Maybe I will even return from time to time with suggestions. So best of luck to you all, and hoping for rainy weather. So I will submit that very shortly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, it's been a great, how long?
6+ years.
6+ years. You know? No, it's good. Great having you on the board, great working with you.
Yeah.
You know, like clockwork. Are ESDs ready yet? Our environment, is that right? What are they called? ESGs? You know what they are.
You're
ESG
talking
investment.
The sequence?
Yeah. That's well, we're talking our investment strategy, you know, I'm not,
Yeah.
I mean, it's clockwork, it was great. So,
Yeah, no pleasure.
yeah.
Thanks for your pleasure. It's, it was very unfortunate when you rotated to the president position. We were in the COVID years, right? So
Yeah.
we were not.
Oh, that's right, it was all online.
Face to face, you know. Did you actually do it face to face at one point?
I remember I did
In person,
one.
I mean,
I think I might have done like the January meeting, maybe? I don't know,
yeah,
maybe.
yeah.
So,
You know, in January, you said that you substituted when you were vice president for
Yeah.
a couple of years.
Yeah.
My entire time, I was online all the way through the whole
It was
entire
all
year.
virtual, right?
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
all virtual.
yeah. It's not the same, you know. This is
No,
much better.
it is
Yeah.
completely different.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Well,
Thank
best
you.
of luck to you and thank you so
Yeah.
much for.
Best of luck to you, Brian.
my pleasure. Everybody.
Thanks, Brian.
You
It'll
know,
be-
you know, board on fourth Thursday night, you know what to find.
Some wine, cheese.
Yeah.
Click on YouTube and watch it.
Yeah.
You're pretty close still.
Yeah.
Okay, stay in the area. Yeah. Oh,
Thanks, Kurt.
Sure. Thank you.
And you wanna report on your first board meeting?
It was lovely.
Let's see. We can go ahead with agenda item 8H, or we can just finish up communications first. There's just a couple of things here. Require some discussion. We essentially got 2 requests for people who were requesting resolutions nominating people for the JPIA Executive Committee. And I can't tell whether they're running against each other or not.
Yeah, it wasn't very clear, but we did get one request from the San Bernardino Valley Water Conservation District, a copy that was actually sent to Dave Warden as well as Rena. And then one from the Cucamonga Valley Water District, which was sent to President Wheeler. I believe it is for two separate positions, but it wasn't made very clear. And what they're requesting is that we pass a resolution nominating these two individuals, you know, just described in the transmittals. One is definitely incumbent and the other, it's been a while since I looked at, but I just don't recall. I believe it would be a new appointment.
I don't recall of ever having passed a resolution,
Right.
like nominating somebody. We have to
Yeah.
go down and in person and vote or something like that at worst.
Even, it might be that we've gotten requests and just never, you know, addressed them with the board. My understanding of the bylaws, I think it's 3 agencies need to pass resos nominating someone for them to be considered for votes. I can't imagine that we're particularly integral to the process. I imagine, you know, these agencies probably have plenty of agencies that they work with. So it's really just a question to the board of if you feel strongly about either of these individuals to put a reso on our agenda in the future.
Nope. Nope.
That's
My opinion would be that we leave it to whoever is going to the meeting, who's
Yeah.
going to actually ending up voting.
Voting, yep. Agree.
They will get more information about what's going on and whether or not they're actually running against each other or there are other people running or not. So. Because it's obviously, this is a independent thing. It's not coming from JPIA, it's coming from the agency.
I mean, if it was coming from JPIA and it's like, here's the 5 candidates, vote for one, and in order to vote, it needed by resolution, that'd be
So when
something
they-
different, but.
When we vote for that, remind me to, because I haven't been there for a while, do they give like a statement, the candidates?
Yes.
Okay, well,
Typically, they will give a statement
if
at
they
the
do,
board
I
meeting.
mean, that, whoever goes,
Yeah.
that would be another indicator, you know, so.
Yeah.
Well, I think the good indicator is they friggin' sent it to Dave Ward personally, I mean, you know.
Yeah, I know.
I know who I'm voting for.
Yeah.
Well, that's more of a JPIA list.
Oh, is it? Okay, fair enough, but they got it right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. They researched.
Well, I think it was sent to me as president, but yeah. And
I mean, they're like, yes.
there was an alternate he was listed as that never got taken off, type of that. Because actually
Got it.
submit the name of who was going to be voting, depending on who was going to the meeting. Whether it was the general manager or whether it was one of the directors who went. You went once, I went several times.
Yeah, I remember basically like you were saying, person who went there could vote. I thought the board could direct the vote, but nobody.
Yeah. I believe last time we knew what the candidates were ahead of time and the board did discuss what direction to give the voting member.
The directors, then we can suggest, but I have no idea.
Yeah.
Well, one actual conference packet comes out, there'll be an inch of paper that deals with various stuff. And there'll be a whole section on the voting portion of it. So. Yeah. So I think we should just ignore these for now.
Okay.
Homework. Is that it?
No, well, yes.
They gotta be excused.
I'm out of here, guys. Thanks, y'all.
Very good.
Thanks,
Take
Brian.
care.
Wait, no, you gotta take
Your name tag.
well, at least the paper out of it.
I'll do that. Take care.
Thanks for that, Brian.
Thank you,
Thanks so
Brian.
much, Brian. I really appreciate it.
You too. Take care.
So agenda item number 8H. Consider resolution 2025-10, appointing Chuck Cotton to the board of directors to fill the term of the vacant Division 5 position through November 3rd, 2026. Yeah,
right.
you want?
Yeah, so last month we went through and just, you know, the process that we went through for the search and applications and interview process for both the Division 4 and Division 5 positions. We did them simultaneously, which was convenient to be able to have a shared process. And so the ad hoc committee, consisting of President Wheeler and Vice President Vela, has, after reviewing the applications and interviewing 3 candidates from Division 5, is making the recommendation to appoint Chuck Cotton to the position. So that is what the attached resolution here does. And at the last meeting, sorry, Director Zuka, you weren't here for the benefit of that, but Chuck did give a very nice background and introduction to himself. I'm not sure if Chuck would like to say a couple words.
Sure, we can have coffee sometime. No obligation.
Whatever you like. Yeah, I'm happy to. I've been resident here in Belmont for a little over 30 years. And I've served on Park and Rec Commission. I volunteer a lot for the city, and I'm also on the Vector Control Board for the position for the city of Belmont. I am now officially fully retired, so I'm looking forward to dedicating time and energy to this organization and the city and people of Belmont to make sure we have sustainable, reliable, quality water for many, many years to come. And look forward to working with everyone here.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. And I'll be bringing cheese and. Yeah.
Good. No
And
problem.
I've known Chuck on from the Mosquito and Vector Control Board for a couple years now. He also was the Brian's neighbor for many years, so.
Mm.
All right. We're very fortunate that he applied.
I'll be happy to offer a resolution.
Okay.
Unless you.
I'm cool.
Okay, I'll like to offer resolution 2025-10, appointing Chuck Cotton to the board of directors to fill the term of the vacant Division 5 position through November 3rd, 2026.
Okay.
Vice President Vela,
Yes.
Director Zuka,
Yes.
Director Covington,
Yes.
President Wheeler.
Yes.
All right.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Yeah.
Thank you.
You knew what you're getting yourself into. You saw the meeting.
Yeah. Now.
And I appreciate you allowing me to at least attend, like in this capacity.
Yes.
To get up to speed as fast as possible. So.
I'd say something snarky about it. It is a public meeting.
Not the same.
We'll just take the thanks.
Not the same as doing this from home.
Well, we could have been sooner though.
That's
Yeah,
true.
exactly.
The bad chair.
Okay, I believe that is everything, so I'm going to adjourn the meeting.
All right.
Benefit of 10, 10 is,
Thank you. Thank
you
you,
know.
everyone.
I have to use the gal.